Teacher, don't be angry. I will persuade him, said Wen Ao Xue. He looked so clean. His clothes were unstained by even a speck of dust. Nobody would think that he was actually a man. Teacher, don't be angry. I will persuade him, said Wen Ao Xue. He looked so clean. His clothes were unstained by even a speck of dust. Nobody would think that he was actually a man. The Celestial Academy is not very famous, but if you became one of its students then you would understand how great it is. You could fully exploit your natural abilities and you would greatly improve your skills as a cultivator. You shouldn't doubt at all that it would be greatly beneficial to you, said Wen Ao Xue to Lin Feng. His beautiful eyes were staring at Lin Feng. He had a big smile on his face. It doesn't look like it when I see your teacher, replied Lin Feng indifferently. Everybody was stupefied. Each and every single one of the wealthy and noble cultivators pulled a long face. Lin Feng was attacking their dignity and making the academy lose face. The teacher was also stupefied. A murderous light flashed in his eyes. He thought that Lin Feng didn't know how to behave in such a delicate situation. He was acting much too bold and was being completely reckless. Your opinion is too biased. Your vision of the situation is unilateral, said Wen Ao Xue while shaking his head. But Lin Feng, as before, was not convinced. Academies and sects had the same purpose even if they didn't work the same way. The entire Yunhai sect had been annihilated and everyone had sacrificed themselves for him, so his main mission was to rebuild the Yunhai sect and make sure it does not repeat any of its past mistakes. Wen Ao Xue is right. What you see is only the tip of the iceberg. I hope that you can join the academy, said another voice. A silhouette which looked like an illusion suddenly jumped from a distant place towards the crowd. It was an old man. When the people saw him, everybody was surprised and looked at him with eyes filled with worship and respect. That old man was the vice principal of the academy. The vice principal of the academy was personally inviting Lin Feng to join the academy. Everybody was astonished. Could it be that Lin Feng is already so powerful that even the most influential people of the academy have an eye on him? Whispered some people in the crowd. Some of the people, much like Xue Qiu and Zhong Ling, were furious because Lin Feng didn't have a letter of recommendation, but Lin Feng, who didn't even need a letter of recommendation to join the academy, wasn't even interested in joining it, and because Lin Feng wasn't interested in joining, even the vice principal himself was trying to convince him to join. You are right. There are some really pathetic students in the academy. They are good-for-nothings, but you have already humiliated them, which was a fitting punishment. As far as the teacher is concerned, he is very narrow-minded. I will make him apologize to you for his actions, said the vice principal to Lin Feng. Immediately after, he looked at the old teacher with a look which made the crowd shiver. The vice principal was going to make the teacher apologize because of Lin Feng? Lin Feng was stupefied as well. He knew that he was a good cultivator, but the academy was full of outstanding students as well. Even if he had defeated Xue Qiu and Bai Zhe, it was only the tip of the iceberg. Why would the vice principal attach so much importance to him? Vice principal, said the old man, stupefied. The vice principal frowned, which scared the old man. Then, the old man turned around, looked at Lin Feng and said, Please accept my most sincere apologies. I acted without thinking. Be kinder and more sincere, said the vice principal, who wasn't satisfied with the old man's apology. The entire crowd and especially the old man could not help but be surprised at such actions. Was Lin Feng so strong that the vice principal needed to be that kind to him? Did Lin Feng actually come from an incredible background? That was hard to imagine. All the teachers were personally invited by the academy. They were all famous and extremely strong. Surprisingly, the vice principal was forcing the teacher to apologize to Lin Feng even though Lin Feng hadn't even made such a request. Everybody was trying to understand why. Why? The teacher that had just apologized pulled a long face. He hated the looks that he was receiving from everyone, but when he saw the vice principal's face, he had no choice but to look at Lin Feng, and he then said, I am sincerely sorry. I am worthless and I hope that you forgive me, Your Excellency. What do you think? Said the vice principal looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng looked at the vice principal. Lin Feng had the impression that the vice principal had something in mind, but Lin Feng was unable to guess what it was. Lin Feng wanted to say something, but then the vice principal interrupted him. If you are not willing to join the Celestial Academy, I can propose something else for you. I can give you a special permit to enjoy all the advantages of a student without restrictions but also without the obligations. Nothing would bind you to the academy, but you could even have a personal teacher. You could benefit from all the resources of the academy for free. You could also leave whenever you want. You would have the same status as a student of the academy without restrictions. There would only be the advantages for you and absolutely no disadvantages. These words made the hearts of the people in the crowd start to pound. They were all astonished. Lin Feng could leave whenever he wanted. He could benefit from all the advantages of the academy. Besides, these words came from the vice principal himself. He had made a promise to Lin Feng, which meant there was no hidden intention and it was not something that he could take back. Could it be that his family name is Duan? Maybe his family is Yu. Or Yu, said some people in the crowd, but if his family name was Duan and he was this much of a genius, then everybody would have already heard about him. Besides, every single person in the Yu clan was way too arrogant and would never join the academy. They were as strong as a powerful sect and wouldn't study outside. The thoughts of the people in the crowd were moving at full speed in their brains. Even if Lin Feng was an outstanding genius and was extremely strong, that still wasn't enough for the vice principal to be this generous to him. The crowd was puzzled and really didn't understand how such a thing was possible. Lin Feng was even more confused than the people in the crowd. Lin Feng couldn't bear it anymore and had to ask, how could I be so lucky? How is this possible? I really want to know why you would give me such an opportunity. Why? It is actually a strike of luck. You don't even have the possibility to refuse because everything will be decided by you, said the vice principal with a big smile on his face before adding, I can only tell you that I had similar experiences in my life. I was also supported by others along the way. Supported by others, thought the crowd who still didn't understand. Lin Feng knew nobody in the Imperial city, why would the vice principal be so good to him? Besides, Lin Feng couldn't refuse because there was no obligation when joining the academy. He could go there whenever he wished and leave whenever he wished as well. How could he refuse something that was only benefits and completely under his control? If the vice principal had malicious intentions, then he wouldn't have acted like that. He could have easily eliminated him. After all, Lin Feng had only broken through to the Ling Qi layer. Maybe I really do have good luck, thought Lin Feng. He then smiled and said, my friends and I will join together. We must be able to stay together. No problem. You can bring anyone as long as you are close with them. Besides, you don't have to respect our rules and regulations, but the others including your friends will have to, said the vice principal honestly. Of course, replied Lin Feng while smiling. That's great. Then, everybody can disperse, said the vice principal. Suddenly, he stretched his hands over to Lin Feng and gave him something. The entire crowd was dying from curiosity. They didn't know what the vice principal was giving to Lin Feng. Welcome to the Celestial Academy, said Xue Yue. Lin Feng nodded and then the group began to enter the academy. They walked under the arch of the gate to discover wonderful and magnificent palaces. Oh my, when Lin Feng saw these parks, palaces and rivers, he couldn't help but be amazed. Everything was perfect. Besides, the architecture of each palace had its own magnificent style. You can explore all of these places in depth during your stay here, said Xue Yue. Lin Feng was really amazed at sight of the palaces. Celestial Academy. The main palace, the name of the academy was written in huge letters. It looked like it was really a unique place within this world. Welcome to the academy. You will not regret it, said Xue Yue while smiling. Lin Feng looked at that boy who looked like a beautiful woman and asked, why did you defend me? When Ao Xue shook his head and said, for the same reason as the vice principal. What I mean is that we've never met before. We don't know each other, why would you help me? There are some people who are so mysterious that you see them for a few seconds and you instantly know that you like them. You are that kind of person, said Wen Ao Xue, whose cheeks had turned red. Lin Feng stared at him stupefied by his response. When Wen Ao Xue saw that Lin Feng was making a strange face, he also made a strange face. Get lost. I'm not one of them, said Wen Ao Xue, which made Lin Feng laugh. Of course, there are people in this world who were attracted to the same sex. Some people liked that type of thing, but Wen Ao Xue obviously didn't, even though he looked the type. At that moment, in a distant place, the vice principal and the teacher were walking together on a path within the territory of the academy. The vice principal saw that the teacher didn't look like he was feeling at ease. Who liked having to apologize to a junior cultivator in front of all the students? Of course he would not be happy about such an event. Are you still angry? Asked the vice principal indifferently to the teacher. I would never disobey your orders. You are the vice principal, said the old man. He had actually been invited by the vice president himself all those years ago. Ha, no need to react that way. You should understand that I never do things for myself, but I understand your reaction, said the vice principal, and then added, I did things this way for a reason. You remember that skill which you were telling me about? Go and take it. Just say that it's an order I gave you. The old man was surprised. Then, the sadness his face expressed was replaced with joy. He looked overjoyed. While walking within the academy, Lin Feng found out that some people were as friendly as him while some of the people were not friendly in the slightest. While walking within the academy, Lin Feng found out that some people were as friendly as him while some of the people were not friendly in the slightest. For instance, Lin Feng had come across a girl who had a resplendent smile on her face which was lit with innocence, yet some of the other girls had similar smiles which were filled with evil intentions. He had come across another young man whose body released a sharp and cold qi. He seemed incredibly evil and dangerous. Have you seen anything peculiar? Asked Wen Ao Xue with a faint smile on his face when he noticed that Lin Feng looked strange as he looked around. He looked particularly strange as he stared at the different people. The qi they release is quite strange, replied Lin Feng. Lin Feng wasn't the only one who had noticed it. Duan Feng and Jing Yun both agreed with him and nodded. You're right. This is because they are very weak. This is why the qi they release is so strange, said Wen Ao Xue while nodding. Immediately after, he raised his thin white womanly hand up and pointed at some distant palaces. He then said, in the Celestial Academy, there are 3 different categories of people within the academy. Each has their own path of training. This is one of the choices which you are confronted with after entering the academy. Depending on the type of cultivator that you wish to become, I will show you where to go. 3 types of people, thought Lin Feng, he was perplexed. He then asked, what are these 3 types of people? The ones who are able to fight on a battlefield while commanding troops. These are the cultivators who are not afraid of bloodshed and violence. They are the first category. Commander, thought Lin Feng surprised. The first type of training the academy delivered was surprisingly of military nature. These people were able to command troops, were not afraid of blood and had to have great wisdom in the art of war. The second type of training you can get teaches you how to become a great leader. It teaches you how to control and manipulate a group of people from the shadows. That sounds a lot like me, thought Lin Feng, whose pupils shrank. Wen Ao Xue seemed to be that kind of person. What about the third one? Asked Lin Feng. He was very curious. Surprisingly, the first two types of people the academy trained were those who wished to become commanders or leaders. Lin Feng had a good impression of the academy. The third category is about learning how to move as swiftly as the wind at night. It teaches you how to become invisible as if you were in the middle of the fog. This is the most mysterious and mystical category, but also the most dangerous. Usually, people don't see them, but if they do see them then blood will flow, said Wen Shue slowly. Lin Feng was amazed again. The third category was an assassin type of training. Who built the academy, wondered Lin Feng. They trained military commanders, political leaders, and assassins. These three categories were all that is required to lead an entire country. Who could have such a wild ambition? Could it be the emperor? Asked Lin Feng to himself. He then immediately refuted that thought. If the emperor had built the academy, why would he have allowed Duan Tian Lang to build the holy courtyard of Xue Yu? However, if the emperor was really at the origin of the academy, why would he have created such a dangerous place? Who is the principal of the academy? Asked Lin Feng to Wen Shue. Wen Shue was surprised. His beautiful eyes stared at Lin Feng and he said, "Many people want to know, but it seems like the academy only has the vice principal. We have never seen the principal with our own eyes. There is only one thing that we can be sure about. The principal must be a member of the Imperial clan. He must have an amazingly high status. I think that you should clearly understand that." Lin Feng slightly nodded. If it had been built by a member of the Imperial clan, then it was made to train people who would later serve the country. This is precisely why the academy prefers to remain discreet and doesn't accept people who don't have a letter of recommendation. It has many students who have a prestigious background. They all happily joined the academy and to know the other students. They know that the academy is an extremely good learning environment. That is why I can assure you that you will have no regret for having joined the academy, said Wen Shue while nodding. Oh, by the way, you probably already know my name, but I don't know yours. Lin Feng. Lin Feng, that's a nice name, said Wen Shue. He then said, I just told you about the three categories of training which can be chosen in the academy. The academy has a lot of students who come from wealthy and noble families, therefore a great majority of them choose the second category because they want to do things similar to their parents. They want to have more responsibilities when they go back to their families. There are many ordinary people who try to learn these skills, but later on, when they want to occupy such functions, they often face a great deal of difficulties. The hot-blooded young men of both noble and ordinary families tend to choose the first category and become military commanders. The third category is the one which people choose the least. This is the most dangerous category. Nobody really knows what they do there and it is shrouded in mystery. Lin Feng was carefully listening to what Wen Shue was telling him. Ordinary people wanted to quickly rise up in the hierarchy. It was very difficult to rise up in the hierarchy for a cultivator who didn't already have a specific background. They required contacts and political influence to gain a higher position. As far as the third category was concerned, it was a difficult choice to make considering that whenever an assassin came out, his life was at stake. Of course, there are other factors to take into consideration. The spirit as well as students' natural abilities play an important role in their decision. However, no matter what a student chooses, the most important thing is that he is definitely going to greatly improve his strength. If a cultivator is not strong, then everything else is useless because strength and willpower are extremely important on the path of cultivation. No matter what you learnt, if you have to fight against someone who is strong, then you will die if you are weaker than them. When Shue looked at Lin Feng and said, Lin Feng, now you have to think carefully. What cultivation category would you like to choose? The first one, replied Lin Feng immediately. Lin Feng didn't like the second category because it came down to fighting and plotting against people. He wasn't interested in using other people for his benefit. Besides, he thought the third category was useless. Therefore, the first category seemed to fit him the best. He could use these skills in real battles. The cultivators of the first category need to be brave, hot-blooded and loyal. Hot-blooded and brave, no problem, but loyal? Loyal to whom? Asked Lin Feng to Wen Shue. He was surprised. Don't look at me that way. I don't know either, replied Wen Shue with a womanly expression in his eyes. Lin Feng, I will bring you to the place where you ought to go. And you? You haven't told me to which category you belong, asked Lin Feng to Wen Ao Xue. Wen Ao Xue looked like a girl and he obviously came from a noble family, but he didn't look as arrogant as the others. He also didn't look very brave and did not seem hot-blooded. Try and guess. The third one, replied Lin Feng without hesitation, which surprised Wen Ao Xue. Immediately after, the latter smiled but remained silent. Duan Feng, what about you? Asked Lin Feng. Lin Feng hadn't forgotten that he was there because of Duan Feng. He would have never thought he would join the academy before that. Me, said Duan Feng while smiling. I will choose the same one as you, Lin Feng, the first one. That's great. Let's go together then, said Lin Feng while smiling. A short time after, they arrived on a huge square. Many people were sitting upright. Some gyukins could be heard. If you want to become one of the first category, then you first need to pass a test. Only if you succeed will you be admitted as a student of the first category, explained Wen Ao Xue while looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng said, if the first category requires a test, what about the two other categories? Is it the same? The second category doesn't require any test, but the third one requires passing a test, and it is by far the most difficult one, said Wen Ao Xue while smiling. Lin Feng was surprised. Most people were absolutely not interested in the third category, but its exam was the most difficult. Lin Feng was puzzled. Besides, it seemed like the first category, in which a great majority was interested, was also the easiest one. On the square, there were many new students but some old students as well. Some of the people who noticed Wen Ao Xue smiled at him. Lin Feng noticed that many people who passed by or saw Wen Ao Xue were avoiding him as if they were terribly scared of his presence. Lin Feng found that very strange. It seems like they're scared of you, said Lin Feng to Wen Ao Xue. What was surprising was that a boy who was as beautiful as a girl scared other people to the point that they avoided him. It seems like they're scared of you, said Lin Feng to Wen Ao Xue. What was surprising was that a boy who was as beautiful as a girl scared other people to the point that they avoided him. Maybe they just hold me in awe and veneration, replied Wen Ao Xue while laughing. At that moment, Lin Feng and the others noticed that there were suddenly less people around them. The reason was obviously Wen Ao Xue. The exam is not so hard. It should be no problem for you to pass. Because the first category is the one in which most people are interested, it is also the category in which the students are the strongest. Every year during the registration and test week, we allow the older students to participate to see how much they have progressed, said Wen Ao Xue to Lin Feng in a low voice while looking at the crowd which was getting bigger and bigger. Will the test be listening to music? Said Lin Feng while looking at a silhouette of an old man who was putting his hands on a zither. He was slightly closing their eyes. You're right, the test is to listen to the melody that he will play, replied Wen Ao Xue while laughing. What? The test consisted in listening to a song. Duan Feng and Jing Yun were astonished as well. Listen to a song. What kind of test was that? Only Meng looked indifferent as ever, as if the entire story had nothing to do with her. You will understand quickly enough, said Wen Ao Xue, who noticed Lin Feng, Jing Yun and Duan Feng looked really strange and seemed to be thinking very deeply. In a short time, the number of people on the square rapidly increased to 200. Some of the people, when they saw Lin Feng and Wen Ao Xue, looked very strange and even stupefied. It's Lin Feng from the events that happened earlier, he must have surprisingly chosen the first category like us. He's quite strong and has solid natural abilities. He could even defeat the noble and wealthy students, but will he be able to pass the test? There should be no problem. You also saw how easy it was for him to defeat Bai Zhe and Zhuqiu. And you also saw how he didn't hesitate and confront the teacher. Courage and determination will be no problem for him. Everybody, the ordinary but also wealthy noble disciples, had seen how strong and brave Lin Feng was. Therefore, even if they didn't necessarily agree on certain points, they still admired him and held him in very high esteem. Besides, he had the qualities required to become a very good commander. At that moment, those who were sitting upright opened their eyes and glanced at everybody else. They looked calm and serene. Alright, let the tests begin. Those who fail or miss the test start can come again tomorrow to attempt it again, said the old man who was holding a zither. He was sitting and surrounded by students sitting as well. The crowd slightly nodded. There were some new students and some old students. Of course, everybody knew the rule and immediately sat down cross-legged. Alright, sit down properly and listen to the zither tune, said Wen Ao Xue to Lin Feng and the others with a smile on his face. Alright, let's sit down then, said Lin Feng and the others. Immediately after, they all sat down cross-legged. Alright, let's start, said the old man while starting to move his fingers over the strings of the zither. But Lin Feng's eyes stopped on the old man's hands. They looked as thin and delicate as Wen Ao Xue's hands. They actually looked very similar. Every single note emitted by the zither was harmonious and melodious. It seemed like the atmosphere had stopped. A short instant later, there was no other sound except that of the zither. Absolute calm reigned over the atmosphere. Progressively, more and more people were closing their eyes and were enjoying the music. It was as if the air they were breathing was completely fresh and contained boundless joy. Lin Feng was almost closing his eyes too, but each time he felt like dozing, he couldn't help but struggle and remain cold-blooded. Hypnotize. Lin Feng suddenly understood. The goal of the tune was to hypnotize people. How powerful! It must be a mysterious skill, thought Lin Feng, and then immediately closed his eyes. He was falling asleep even though he was struggling. He really wanted to see how powerful the skill was, so eventually stopped resisting. Suddenly, he had the impression that he was alone in the world. Maybe the skill was too powerful, or had Lin Feng voluntarily fallen asleep without the hypnosis taking effect. On his side, there were suddenly many cavalry holding their long daggers. They were releasing an overpowering killing intent, and it was clear they wanted to kill him. Blood was splashing everywhere. At that moment, blood started splashing all around him. There was even blood splashing over his face and body. Blood began to cover everything in sight. Suddenly, a head without its body flew towards him. The huge eyes on that head were still wide open in shock. Very quickly, he was surrounded by a bunch of bones, flesh and blood. The corpses were piling up endlessly. Under the setting sun, a crying woman's voice spread through the atmosphere. All these departed spirits were demanding vengeance for the grievance of their death. Under the pale light diffused by the moon, they walking around in an apocalyptic landscape of blood and death. At that moment, a certain number of people on the square opened their eyes. They were breathing heavily and were still in shock. Their clothes were soaked with cold sweat. Those who had just woken up with a start were hurriedly looking around them at everyone else taking the test. They noticed that some of the other students still had their eyes closed, especially the older students who seemed completely immersed in their dreams. Lin Feng's back was also covered with cold sweat. Who could stay that calm and serene with such nightmarish visions? Besides, the melody which emanated out of the zither strangely made the scene look especially real. A strong and intense feeling invaded Lin Feng's heart again. He had the feeling that his brain had been struck once again. He could feel the cold sweat flowing down his back. An illusion. That zither, what a great power! The melody of that zither could surprisingly make people fall asleep and have nightmarish visions out of which it was almost impossible to free oneself. How horrifying! If the one who was playing the zither intensified the strength of his melody, couldn't it be possible to make the sleeping victims go insane and collapse? Around Lin Feng, Duan Feng was still tightly closing his eyes, but he was slightly shaking. Regarding Jing Yun, she had already opened her eyes and her heavy yet erratic breathing gave the impression that she was previously suffocating. Otherwise, many other people had already opened their eyes while some others were still closing them. However, the bodies all of those who had their eyes closed were already reacting to the music. That's an intense exam, thought Lin Feng. He had a strange smile on his face. A moment before, because he was immersed in the dream, he hadn't had the time to think too much, but at that moment, he understood the purpose of the exam. It seemed like by opening his eyes he had failed. A short time later, the melody of the zither stopped. Everybody started opening their eyes, one after another. The musician looked at the crowd and said, "The purpose of the exam was to test your endurance and your determination. If that kind of environment is unbearable for you and that you hastily woke up, it means that it would be hard for you to be on a battlefield. Therefore, those who woke up a moment before, please leave. You cannot become commanders." "So that's how it is," thought Lin Feng, making a wry smile. However, Lin Feng actually hadn't woken up because he couldn't bear being in that place. He had woken up because his spirit made him unable to become the prisoner of the illusions and he had broken free. Many people seemed very disappointed and were leaving one after another. They clearly understood that staying was of no use. Besides, some of them already doubted that they could become commanders and thought that their choice wasn't the correct path for them. The musician looked around and saw Lin Feng. He then asked, "You, why are you not leaving?" Those who knew Lin Feng were stupefied. Had Lin Feng failed the test? When Xue was astonished. Could it be that Lin Feng couldn't stand bear seeing such a horrible scene? The exam wasn't easy, but it initially didn't seem impossible for someone like Lin Feng. After all, he had already demonstrated his strength. "Teacher, I wasn't woken up by the horrible visions," said Lin Feng, smiling wryly and shaking his head. When he finished talking, many people were looking at him and he felt oppressed by all these eyes staring at him. The teacher was supposed to have an outstanding level, how come he hadn't noticed that Lin Feng hadn't been woken up by the horror of the vision? Besides, the way he was looking at Lin Feng even looked like he was despising him. "If you really want to become a commander, don't give up and come back tomorrow at the same time," said the teacher. Tomorrow? Lin Feng was annoyed. The inauguration of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu was taking place on the day after. "Teacher, let me try again," said Lin Feng with the same wry smile on his face while shaking his head. "You're really shameless. You just had a chance. Come back tomorrow." "No need to be impatient," said the teacher, which surprised Lin Feng. Everybody was looking at him. Lin Feng shook his head, smiled and said again, "Teacher, I beg you, give me a second chance." The teacher looked at Lin Feng in a strange way and said in a low voice, "Determined and motivated as you are now, it is hard to believe that you couldn't pass the test. I will make an exception and break the rule for you and let you try again today." As a cultivator, keeping face was important, but it wasn't always the way it seemed. Lin Feng had been asked to leave for failing the test, but he hadn't. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng in a strange way. Even if some people found him ridiculous and thought that he was humiliating himself, Lin Feng kept smiling and asked for a second chance. That smile showed that he didn't care about the fact that he was losing face by requesting a second attempt. As a cultivator, keeping face was important, but it wasn't always the way it seemed. Lin Feng had been asked to leave for failing the test, but he hadn't. Everybody was looking at Lin Feng in a strange way. Even if some people found him ridiculous and thought that he was humiliating himself, Lin Feng kept smiling and asked for a second chance. That smile showed that he didn't care about the fact that he was losing face by requesting a second attempt. However, the teacher understood that Lin Feng wasn't acting this way because he didn't care about dignity. On the contrary, Lin Feng was stubborn and only stubborn people persevered and never gave up. The crowd was surprised. The teacher had suddenly accepted and gave Lin Feng a second chance. On top of that, the teacher's voice sounded like he really had faith in Lin Feng's future due to his stubborn beliefs. "Thank you very much, teacher," said Lin Feng while nodding his head. Lin Feng had a good impression of the teacher. He seemed friendly and easy to approach. Besides, he didn't look arrogant at all. "I'm going to start playing the zither again, this time you are the only one who is going to listen to it," said the teacher indifferently. Immediately, he started playing again. However, just as he said, the crowd couldn't hear the music at all. The teacher could surprisingly control the flow of his music to make it audible to only the people whom he selected. How strong, thought the crowd stupefied. The teacher had never displayed such a masterful control in front of them before. At that moment, Lin Feng had the feeling that the melody was a river flowing into his ears. He could already feel that his eyes were starting to feel heavy under the hypnosis. He focused his entire attention on the music and tried to abandon himself to the illusion. He could feel himself slowly drifting into the illusion with each passing moment. However, something strange was happening. How cruel, if my celestial spirit remains like this, then I will not be able to fall into the illusion, thought Lin Feng. A cold qi had invaded into Lin Feng's body and he no longer was affected by illusion and the music had no power over him. Everything around him was extremely clear and calm, his eyes were wide open. Even though the melody was the same as before, his eyes remained wide open and were staring at the teaching playing the zither. Huh! The teacher was astonished when he saw that Lin Feng was surprisingly not falling asleep and was not struggling to stay awake in the slightest. He suddenly started playing a completely different tune. This time the rhythm was faster and the power was much greater. However, Lin Feng's eyes were wide open as before. He had been staring at the teacher from the beginning. He still wasn't falling into the illusion. The teacher played another tune with an even faster rhythm and its power was on another level compared to the original test. His fingers were moving at full speed above the strings of the instrument as they elegantly created the music. Lin Feng seemed completely unperturbed and unaffected. A short moment after, the teacher smiled as he started playing slower and finally stopped. He then looked at Lin Feng and asked, "What's your name?" "Lin Feng. It seems that you didn't fail the test originally." "Congratulations on passing the test," said the teacher. The crowd was stunned. Lin Feng had passed the test. Why and how was that even possible? Why hadn't Lin Feng been hypnotized even though the teacher had played for him? What did that mean? "Thank you for having given me a second chance, teacher," replied Lin Feng with a big smile on his face. If the teacher hadn't given him a second chance, he would have had no other solution. "Teacher, what does that mean?" He woke up from the dream the first time. Why did he pass? Besides, he insolently asked for a second chance. "How could you let him pass after being so shameless?" asked a tall and robust guy walking towards the teacher. "The thing that you do not understand is that during the first test he hadn't fully fallen into my illusion and could not be fully hypnotized. He had just closed his eyes and fallen into a very light sleep, at most it would have only given him a brief look into the illusion, and he was never under its control. The second time, he wasn't even affected by the melody and stayed awake the whole time even when I increased the strength of the melody. This is the first time I have seen such a remarkable display and I have been working in the academy for many years," said the teacher while smiling and shaking his head. "He wasn't affected by the melody?" asked the people in the crowd stupefied. They were strangely looking at Lin Feng wondering if he was even a human being. Wen Ao Shui couldn't imagine it either. He was really puzzled at how Lin Feng had rejected the hypnosis. The tall and robust guy's eyes were wide open. Immediately after, he scratched his head and walked towards Lin Feng before saying, "I'm sorry. I said unpleasant things about you without thinking. I have misunderstood you. If you are angry at me then please tell me what I can do for you to forgive me." Lin Feng raised his head and saw the huge guy standing before him. Lin Feng wasn't angry at him. That guy was really huge though, almost as big as Han Man. He was probably like Han Man and spoke without thinking because he was one of the simple and honest types. When Lin Feng thought about Han Man, a cold feeling invaded his heart. "Duan Tian Lang. Duan Han. What did you say a moment ago?" "I have already forgotten," said Lin Feng while smiling. That tall and robust guy was surprised and then smiled. He stretched his big hands towards Lin Feng and said, "Yuan Shan." Lin Feng. Both of them shook hands and smiled at each other. Perseverance, willpower, Courage and strength are the required skills to become a great commander, said the teacher while nodding his head. He packed up his instrument and said, Lin Feng, if you want to learn how to play the zither or the guqin, come to me and I will teach you. When he finished talking, he turned around and left. Lin Feng was stupefied as well. He was smiling and, while looking at the silhouette of the teacher in the horizon, said, Teacher, I will do my best to show you that you did not make the wrong decision. Everybody in the crowd was staring at Lin Feng with eyes full of admiration and envy. These musical cultivation skills were extremely powerful. Lin Feng, congratulations. I've always wanted to learn how to play the zither or the guqin, but the teacher will not teach me his methods, said Wen Ao Shui while smiling at Lin Feng. I'm just lucky, replied Lin Feng while shaking his head and smiling. It seems like you are often very lucky, said Wen Ao Shui and added, now, you are also a student of the academy. I will show you where we sleep. Alright. Thanks. I'm coming too, said Yuan Shan, who seemed to be very easygoing. Alright, you are also a student of the academy, I do not see why you cannot join our group of friends. When Ao Shui brought them to the next palace, they quickly went inside. Lin Feng raised his head and was amazed. That castle had about 20 floors. From the center, one could see the sky through the open roof of the palace in the center. These are all rooms for the students. You should choose your rooms first. The middle is dedicated to practicing cultivation under the open sky. The palace was huge. There was a lot of free space within. Lin Feng found out that all the rooms were extremely large and had multiple living quarters inside as if it was a large house. It even had a large living area which was shared by the multiple living quarters within that room. All the rooms are the same. If you want to choose a room where nobody else is occupying a living quarters, that is not a problem. Do as you wish inside the palace. There's only one thing that you should note. Men and women all live here, so please be respectful. Besides, there are some people who like peace and do not enjoy being disturbed. Don't move yourself into the same shared living space as them until they have given you their permission. Doing so is forbidden. Of course, said Lin Feng while nodding. He didn't have any special requirement when it came to his living quarters. He hoped to find a place with a few empty rooms though, so that he and his friends could live next to each other. Let's choose this one. I want this room, said Lin Feng pointing at a stone door. Jing Yun and Duan Feng chose the living quarters which were next to that of Lin Feng. Yuan Shan chose the living quarters which were next to Duan Feng's. What about you? Asked Lin Feng to Meng Qing. I can stay with you. It's not as if space is lacking here, said Meng Qing indifferently. She sounded calm as always. However, Lin Feng was surprised. When Ao Shui looked at Lin Feng while smiling, the expression in Wen Ao Shui's eyes made Lin Feng feel very uncomfortable. Ha ha ha, that's not a bad idea, laughed Yuan Shan wholeheartedly. Lin Feng glanced at him and felt even more uncomfortable. Alright, that's a good idea. I will be able to take good care of you, said Lin Feng. Duan Feng was astonished. Lin Feng wanted to take care of Meng Qing. Lin Feng, big brother, you're truly great, thought Duan Feng, but the words didn't come out of his mouth. If we live together, you will be able to tell me at least 10 stories a day, whispered Meng Qing, which made Lin Feng's legs go weak to the point that he almost fell down. What a cruel girl. The next day during the morning at the Celestial Academy, people kept arriving one after another, but there were less people than the day before. In the Imperial city, there was a large public square where people were gathering. There was already a large group of people, but people continued to rush over. At the end of that public square, there was a huge gate which had a few words engraved, Xue Yu Holy Courtyard. That was precisely the day on which the inauguration of the Holy Courtyard of Xue Yu was occurring. After the news had spread, a myriad of people had rushed over to that place. Some of them were hoping to study at the Holy Courtyard while some others had just come to watch the ceremony. The creation of the Holy Courtyard of Xue Yu was a grand event in the history of the country. It would possibly change the destiny of the Xue Yu country. This day was probably not going to be a tranquil one. Chapter 119, The Gathering. Chapter 119, The Gathering. It looks like the holy courtyard of Xue Yu attracts many more cultivators than the Celestial Academy. Lin Feng was standing in the middle of that sea of people. He was wearing his bronze mask to conceal his identity. Meng, Qing and the others were all standing next to Lin Feng. When Ao Shui and Yuan Shan had followed the group as well. They wanted to see how popular the holy courtyard of Xue Yu was with their own eyes. Jing Yun was looking at Lin Feng's bronze mask. Her heart was frantically pounding. He probably had a good reason for wearing a bronze mask. It obviously meant that he didn't want other people to recognize him. It reminded her that she still didn't know what had happened to him during the destruction of the Yunhai sect. Sunlight passed through the clouds that were in the sky and shone down upon the crowd. It felt warm and comfortable. It was truly a good day for the ceremony. Look, they came out. How majestic, said a multitude of people in the crowd one after the other when they saw the valiant silhouettes passing under the huge gate of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. They were all wearing magnificent white robes. 2 words were sewn into their robes, Holy Courtyard. The letters looked splendid and luxurious. Their robes gave the impression that they were ready to do battle at any given moment. There were hundreds of them who were all wearing the same robes. They were all extremely young cultivators. A short time later, they had all passed through the gate of the courtyard and walked towards the extremely vast public square. Within the public square, there was a huge stage which they would all climb up, one after the other. They then looked at the crowd in a cold and detached manner. They all had extremely arrogant and domineering expressions on their faces. These were the first people chosen to study at the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. They came from each corner of the country to this location. At that moment, they were standing on the huge stage in front of millions of people. They couldn't help but feel extremely proud. Lin Feng looked at them through his bronze mask. His heart was growing colder and colder until it had become completely ice cold. Amongst all these people, he already knew many of them. Ling Huishan. Tu Fu. When Ren Yan, these people used to be extremely popular in the Yunhai sect. They were all considered as outstanding geniuses and were very important for the prosperity of the sect. When the Yunhai sect had been destroyed, they had betrayed it and sided with Duan Tian Lang, and at that moment, they were standing with him on the stage and sharing his joy. Other than these 3 people, Lin Feng recognized other people from the Yunhai sect. They were all ranked disciples who had gratefully accepted Duan Tian Lang's offer. There were not only disciples of the Yunhai sect. There were also disciples from other big sects as well. He noticed his cousin Lin Qian from the Haoyu sect as well as Lin Hong from the Ice and Snow Mountain village. Ha ha ha, Lin Rui, look at Lin Qian and Lin Hong, they're already students of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. Their future will be bright and wonderful. We will become the strongest clan in Yangzhou City and annihilate all the other small clans in no time. Lin Ba Dao, Lin Feng's uncle, was surprisingly there and was loudly speaking about such matter without regard for those around him. He was surrounded by members of the Lin clan. Lin Rui was there as well. Indeed. I think that Lin Qian and Lin Hong are definitely reliable. They will definitely become the most important pillars of our Lin clan in the future, replied Lin Rui while smiling. He was extremely polite to Lin Ba Dao. These days, Lin Ba Dao often relied on his 2 children to solidify his position. The higher they would rise, the greater his influence became. The problem is that Na Lan Xiong, Na Lan Feng was also accepted. That's not too good. Na Lan Feng is currently studying at the holy courtyard of Xue Yu, said Lin Ba Dao while glancing at the crowd. He noticed many people from Yangzhou City, including the Na Lan clan. No need to pay attention to them. Our Lin clan has 2 disciples who are now students at the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. Besides, Lin Qian is extremely strong and her spirit is incredibly powerful. Na Lan Feng could never compete with her, said Lin Rui coldly. Of course, when Lin Ba Dao heard these words, a huge proud smile appeared on his face. At that moment, Lin Feng was standing far behind the Lin clan and could see their silhouettes. It seemed like they had all rushed over from Yangzhou City to the Imperial City. The entire Lin clan thought that the holy courtyard of Xue Yu provided the students with an incredibly high social status. What they didn't know though is that someone whose family name was also Lin had refused to study at the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. They also didn't know that the entire Yunhai sect had sacrificed themselves to save him, and that was the person they had expelled from their clan. Ha! Today, so many people have come to see the inauguration of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. This is a great honor for me, said a loud voice from far away. Two silhouettes then climbed onto the high stage. They were Duan Tian Lang and Duan Han, who both still had faces filled with arrogance. It looks the rumors were not groundless. It is indeed Duan Tian Lang who created the holy courtyard of Xue Yu, thought some people in the crowd. In the past, when people didn't know who intended to create such a place, some people thought that its creator was going to be either Duan Tian Lang or Lu Tsanglan. At that moment, everybody finally knew that it was Duan Tian Lang who had created the holy courtyard. I, Duan Tian Lang, would like to say a few words. You all have traveled over huge distances to come and assist to the inauguration ceremony of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. Some of you though have come with the hope to be able to join us and become one of our students. If that's the case, please note that you should be young, outstanding, and should at least have broken through to the Ling Qi layer. If you meet our requirements, please write your names on the list. If you are chosen to study at the holy courtyard, we will provide you with the best skills and techniques. Many disciples will even have access to high-quality Xian level skills. When Duan Tian Lang finished talking, many people in the crowd were astonished. Xian level skills were not easily obtained, especially high-quality ones. Unless a cultivator was the disciple of one of the biggest sects or was very rich, obtaining such skills was extremely hard. Even in the biggest sects, disciples had to have reached a certain level before gaining access to such high-level skills. The crowd was extremely excited by Duan Tian Lang's words. The only thing that annoyed some people was that one of the requirements was to have reached the Ling Qi layer. Besides, there is something that I would like to announce today. There are two people that everybody would like to see today at the holy courtyard of Xue Yu, said Duan Tian Lang with a weird smile on the corner of his mouth. The crowd was dying out of curiosity. Everybody wanted to see these two people. Who could they be? Considering the way Duan Tian Lang had said these words, these two people were probably going to be extraordinary talents. You too, please come out, said Duan Tian Lang. Everybody started shaking in anticipation. There was a person who was falling down from the sky like a snowflake, slowly and softly. The high official Luo Xue, said the crowd stupefied. How incredibly strong and powerful. He was the strongest disciple ever in the Ice and Snow Mountain village. He was one of the 8 high officials. Why would he come to the holy courtyard of Xue Yu though? At the same time, an extremely strong wind started blowing over the area. Snowflakes were fluttering in the air. Suddenly, the crowd noticed a shadow in the sky. It was a legendary rock that was flying through the air. Chu Zhanpeng. The eyes of the people in the crowd shrank. The crowd was shaking in excitement and surprise. The two high officials Luo Xue and Chu Zhanpeng were there and were surprisingly going to join the courtyard. Nobody would have ever thought that. Chu Zhanpeng was Chu Qing's son and the future patriarch of the Haoyu sect. Why would he want to join the holy courtyard of Xue Yu? So that's how it is, Luo Xue and Chu Zhanpeng came to join the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. Thios is indeed a strange and wonderful event. Duan Tian Lang is very famous and has a great deal of power. All sorts of comment were rising amongst the crowd. As expected, extremely famous people had come to join the holy courtyard. Luo Xue and Chu Zhanpeng were standing on Duan Tian Lang's left and right. The Imperial clan and the two external high officials were standing next to each other shoulder to shoulder. And now, let me announce the official opening of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. I, Duan Tian Lang, am the first principal, said Duan Tian Lang in such a loud voice that people could hear him for far away in the crowd. Duan Lai, congratulations, said voices amongst the crowd. Many people in the crowd then took out golden ceremony boxes. They were presents for the godlike celebrities who were present. Bai clan. Congratulations. Zhong clan. Congratulations. Gu clan. Congratulations. People were unceasingly coming out of the crowd with golden boxes and rushed to hand over their gifts as if they had been waiting patiently this whole time to offer their congratulations. Duan Tian Lang had a big smile on his face. Thank you everybody. Those concerned, please go ahead and take your gifts. Those who were congratulating and offering presents were nobles of the imperial city. The crowd understood that those at the origin of the creation of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu were the imperial clan. Those who were congratulating and offering presents were nobles of the imperial city. The crowd understood that those at the origin of the creation of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu were the imperial clan. It is useless to mention that those who could join the holy courtyard of Xue Yu were extremely powerful. Those who were offering the presents then slowly moved back towards the crowd. Duan Tian Lang had a big smile on his face expressing his satisfaction at the way things were turning out. Everybody knew that the next step was the recruitment of new disciples. But at that moment, a strong qi emerged from the atmosphere. Everybody had the sensation that the top of their head was suddenly under heavy pressure which made them raise their heads towards the sky. Arrow. Suddenly, coming from the heavens like a meteor whose trajectory had the shape of a beautiful and perfect arch was piercing through the air at full speed straight towards Duan Tian Lang on the high stage. What's going on? Shouted people in the crowd alarmed. Someone was surprisingly attacking Duan Tian Lang with an arrow on the day of the inauguration of the holy courtyard. How heartless! Duan Tian Lang was surprised. The smile on his face vanished and was replaced with a cold and evil expression. Break! A strong and powerful sword qi spread through the atmosphere and blocked the arrow and causing it to fall down onto the ground. At the same time, a strong rumbling noise invaded everybody's ears and the ground started shaking. Lu Zhanglan offers his congratulations for the establishment of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu, said a loud voice which stupefied the crowd. Lu Zhanglan, also known as Divine Arrow Lu Zhanglan, he had come and attacked Duan Tian Lang. Qi Xia cavalry troops offer our congratulations for the establishment of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. The reason for the rumbling noises and the shaking ground soon revealed itself. Far away in the horizon, the qi of a multitude of Qi Xia armored cavalry suddenly revealed itself in the air. The entire crowd could feel the qi growing nearer and nearer. What's that? What's going on? Cried out the crowd in alarm. Their expressions were drastically changing. Suddenly, a storm of arrows filled the sky above the crowd. The scene was strangely beautiful. Everybody was stunned. They couldn't help but blankly stare at all the arrows which were blotting out the sun. The sky was filled with so many arrows that the sunlight was struggling to pierce through. Had Lu Zhanglan really come to congratulate the establishment of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu? How audacious, furiously shouted Duan Tian Lang making an evil face. Duan Tian Lang suddenly jumped in the air while holding his sword which emitting a bright, resplendent light. At the same time, many people jumped in the air as well releasing an extremely strong qi and attacking the arrows in the sky. Numerous arrows were falling down at that moment and people in the crowd chaotically tried to avoid being caught in the crossfire. The Qi Xia armored cavalry quickly arrived and dispersed crowd. A strong wind surrounded them. Their leader particularly attracted everybody's attention. He had long snow-white hair. He was very handsome and his clothes looked beautiful and clean. It's Lu Zhanglan. How come his hair has entirely turned white, said some people in the crowd while looking at Lu Zhanglan. Could it be that he had come to the ceremony of the holy courtyard to cause trouble? The Qi Xia armored cavalry had stopped. There were about 200 of them. Each and every single one of them looked determined and majestic. They all looked like battle-hardened conquerors. "Lu Lan, do you know what you're doing?" said Duan Tian Lang evilly while fixedly staring at Lu Lan, who was sat atop his Xie armored horse. "I have come in the name of justice," said Lu Lan, sounding calm and serene yet extremely determined. "Justice?" said Duan Tian Lang while smiling coldly. "Today is the inauguration of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. It's the biggest and most important celebration of the country, and you dare talk about justice, whatever that is supposed to mean. I have been serving our country for at least 20 years, I have fought on many battlefields and I have never complained about it, even once. Then, I even sent my own daughter to all the corners of the country to find outstanding disciples who could join the holy courtyard of Xue Yu and become pillars of our nation," said Lu Lan while raising his head towards the sky. His long white hair was floating in the wind. "I dedicated my life to the country. I am the commander of the army of Xie cavalry, and you, Duan Tian Lang, asked me to lend you my army, which I naively did. You then united with other large sects and used my Xie cavalry to go and annihilate the Yunhai sect, the sect which made me into the man that I am today, the sect that trained me and cared for me. In one day, you exterminated all of them and left an unceasingly flowing river of blood behind you, and then, you dare say you don't know what I mean by justice," said Lu Lan while slowly turning his head towards Duan Tian Lang. Lu Lan's words were filled with a sharp coldness. When the crowd heard Lu Lan's words, they sighed with emotion. The Imperial clan was indeed cruel. Lu Lan was an amazing person. He was a hero of the nation, and surprisingly, the Imperial clan had ordered the destruction of his sect, the Yunhai sect. Nobody would have thought that Duan Tian Lang was capable of such a thing. The Yunhai sect disobeyed the order of the Imperial clan and refused to send some of its disciples to the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. This is what happens when one disobeys Imperial orders. Therefore, the destruction of the Yunhai sect was a logical punishment for its defiance. Besides, today, you dare enter the Imperial city with the Xie armored cavalry and cause trouble at the inauguration ceremony of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. This is a serious offense, said Duan Tian Lang while glancing at Lu Lan coldly. He then added on the same ice-cold tone, besides, making the Xie armored cavalry rebel against the Imperial clan is another serious crime. Rebel against the Imperial clan? The crowd was stupefied. Duan Tian Lang was suddenly accusing Lu Lan of being a rebel. However, Duan Tian Lang and the ones close to him looked calm and didn't seem too affected by the series of events. So, asking for justice is a crime. I see. I, Lu Lan, have a clear conscience and have nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to the Imperial clan. However, I feel ashamed for my sect, for my brothers and sisters who died with our general until death, shouted the cavalry on their Xie armored horses in unison. They had voluntarily followed their general. They were fearlessly defying death. When the crowd heard the voice of the troops filled with righteous ardor and expressing loyalty to their general, they were all moved. The scene was so tragic and touching. What is the point in living such a life, said Wen Ao Shui in the middle of the crowd. His eyes were filled with sorrow. He looked heartbroken. Lin Feng was standing next to Wen Ao Shui. Under his bronze mask, his eyes were sparkling. Lu Lan had come to the Imperial city with his army of Xie armored cavalry. He had come to fight for justice, but it was also clear to him that he could die at any moment. Lu Lan took a deep and desolate breath and glanced at every single member of his army. Since it's this way, today is going to be our last battle. Too bad that we're on that square in the Imperial city and not on a battlefield, said Lu Lan while grabbing his bow. He then put an arrow in it and aimed at Duan Tian Lang. However, Duan Tian Lang looked extremely calm and peaceful. He even had an evil smile on the corner of his mouth. At the same time, many strong cultivators moved towards Duan Tian Lang's side at the same time and released some intensely powerful qi which seemed to be lacerating the atmosphere. The situation was explosive. A great war was about to break out. "Wait, wait," shouted someone in the crowd. Immediately after, a silhouette started walking out of the crowd. That person was wearing a bronze mask. It was impossible to see their expression. Lu Zhanglan glanced at him and was about to attack him when he recognized the bronze mask. He was stupefied. He put his bow down. "That's him." Lin Feng had prevented Lu Zhanglan from crippling his own cultivation in the Yunhai sect. Back then, he had understood that that person who was wearing a bronze mask had been Lin Feng. Therefore, at that moment, he was able to recognize him. The entire Yunhai sect had sacrificed themselves to protect and save Lin Feng's life. "This has nothing to do with you." "Get lost," said Lu Zhanglan coldly. As if Lin Feng hadn't heard Lu Zhanghan, he calmly shook his head and said, "General, let bygones be bygones. We cannot bring them back now. Why bother and come to the Imperial city?" "For justice," replied Lu Zhanglan. He wouldn't have thought that Lin Feng would appear and start talking. Lu Zhanglan was already starting to be puzzled by this dilemma. Justice? But what is justice for the general is in other people's eyes considered as suicide. You just look like a general who wants to die, nothing more. "If justice is what you think it is, then it's worthless," replied Lin Feng while shaking his head. He started moving towards Lu Zhanglan. Lin Feng then stood next to him and glanced at Duan Tian Lang. "Duan Tian Lang, today is the inauguration of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. May I ask some questions?" Duan Tian Lang wouldn't have thought that Lin Feng would appear on that day. Considering that it was the inauguration day of the courtyard, he had to handle things cleanly and properly. Thus, he couldn't refuse and then said, "Go ahead." "The holy courtyard of Xue Yu, why is it called the holy courtyard?" "Because we want it to be a pure and holy place, a place where morally elevated people come to become great cultivators. People who are chosen to study at the courtyard should also have pure souls," replied Duan Tian Lang. I see," said Lin Feng while slightly nodding. He then pointed at the crowd and said, "In the middle of the crowd, there are people from the Hao Yu sect, from the Ice and Snow Mountain village as well as people from the Yunhai sect which you destroyed. Now you are saying that you want these people to rebel against their own sects to join the holy courtyard of Xue Yu for the sake of purity and moral values. Is that right?" When Lin Feng finished talking, a complete silence invaded the entire area. Duan Tian Lang was stunned. "A moment ago, you used the word rebel in a negative way, but the Yunhai sect disciples who followed you after you destroyed their sect, are they not rebels of the Yunhai sect as well?" "But no, according to your logic, these rebels are considered as pure and holy because they joined the holy courtyard of Xue Yu." "That's a weird contradiction," said Lin Feng to Duan Tian Lang, who remained silent. Duan Tian Lang opened his mouth but no words came out. Lin Feng's poignant words made him speechless. Lin Feng didn't care about Duan Tian Lang's facial expression and continued talking. "Duan Tian Lang, I really don't know if you are the one who chose the name, Holy Courtyard of Xue Yu, or if it was someone else." Lin Feng didn't care about Duan Tian Lang's facial expression and continued talking. "Duan Tian Lang, I really don't know if you are the one who chose the name, Holy Courtyard of Xue Yu, or if it was someone else." "Of course it is my idea," replied Duan Tian Lang immediately. He wanted to kill Lin Feng. He was evilly staring at him. What a skillful manipulator, thought members of the crowd as they watched the scene unfold. Lin Feng had just said that the holy courtyard of Xue Yu didn't deserve such a name as it was recruiting rebels. Duan Tian Lang was unable to refute Lin Feng's words, which obviously made the crowd agree with Lin Feng. Lin Feng had just asked him whose idea it was to call it the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. He obviously knew that Duan Tian Lang would reply that it was his. Saying anything else would have been making the ones above him bear the responsibility for that, and he didn't dare to accuse them. Besides, Duan Tian Lang had been unable to deny the fact that the courtyard didn't deserve its name, which meant that he was recognizing that Lin Feng was correct in what he was saying. He had no argument remaining to defend himself. That's the way it is. You, Duan Tian Lang, convinced the biggest sects to hand over their best disciples to you and destroyed the Yunhai sect, then finally created the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. How prestigious. But didn't you know that the Yunhai sect was General Lu Zhanglan's sect? Continued Lin Feng while Duan Tian Lang remained uncommunicative. That was a very smart move from your part, Duan Tian Lang, because Lu Zhanglan was a disciple of the Yunhai sect. Besides, everybody knows how kind and honest Lu Zhanglan is. You knew that he would never tolerate your actions of destroying his sect. He would definitely come to you seeking revenge. That way, he would be forced to abandon his official functions and would come to the Imperial city to try and kill you. Then, you would be able to call him a rebel and damage his reputation and make him lose everything that he has built throughout the years. What a perfect plan. Your methods are absolutely perfect, but what was your agenda when you started to plot against one of the pillars supporting this country? Lin Feng was speaking uninterruptedly. Everybody was astonished by every single word that came from his mouth. That's right. What Lin Feng said was entirely true. That was a demonically perfect plan. However, at that moment, many people thought that Duan Tian Lang probably wasn't the one at the origin of this plot. Everybody was shaking. They were moved by Lin Feng's words. After everything that Lu Zhanglan had done for his country, who could have dared to plot against him? How tragic. Stop babbling nonsense. Shut up. Shouted Duan Tian Lang furiously. An ice-cold qi which smelt like death suddenly surrounded Lin Feng's body. Could it be that I am wrong? That you are not the author of all these horrors? Added Lin Feng, who seemed like hadn't noticed that Duan Tian Lang wanted to kill him. Lin Feng's last remark shook up the crowd. Of course it was me who was the origin of all of these events. Are you done talking now? Said Duan Tian Lang, unperturbedly admitting that he was the one who had undertaken all of this. But could it be that the people in the shadows were actually the ones who had come up with the ideas first? However, there weren't many people above Duan Tian Lang in the hierarchy of the country, so if he wasn't the one who had undertaken these horrors, who else could it be? Of course. I see. Since you admit that you are the who started all of this, I would like to ask you, since you plotted against General Lu Zhanglan and also hurt and killed so many people of the Xue Yu country, are you not a rebel yourself? Is it not still considered a crime if a member of the Duan clan rebels? Asked Lin Feng. He glanced at Duan Tian Lang and then at the crowd and said, and all of you who have helped him do evil, haven't you also committed a crime against the country too? The crowd was stunned. Lin Feng was using the arguments, which Duan Tian Lang had used against Lu Zhanglan, but this time they were directed against Duan Tian Lang himself as well as the crowd. Lin Feng believed in justice and knew that he was right with what he was saying. Not the crowd or even Duan Tian Lang could deny what Lin Feng was saying. Those who had committed crimes were accusing the innocent people of being guilty. Lin Feng had just brought about a radical change in the situation and was exposing the truth. His tongue was sharp as a sword. If it was another location, then Duan Tian Lang would have killed Lin Feng without hesitation. But that was the inauguration day of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu in the Imperial city, so he had to be prudent and cautious about everything he did. People coming from everywhere in the country were paying attention to his words and behavior. He couldn't attack Lu Zhanglan except if Lu Zhanglan behaved like he did a moment before when he was ready to attack him. If Duan Tian Lang took the initiative to attack, then that would definitely be a rebellion against the country. If Lu Zhanglan took the initiative, then its blame would fall onto him. Why did you come to talk nonsense today? On the day of the inauguration ceremony? What evil intentions have brought you here? Duan Tian Lang seemed like he had completely forgotten Lu Zhanglan and was now getting excessively angry at Lin Feng. Besides, he had changed the subject completely. How am I causing trouble? I just spoke a few truths, that's all. If everybody thinks that everything that I said is unjustified and unreasonable, then I will leave, said Lin Feng. Actually, he had come to the holy courtyard of Xue Yu because he was really interested in disrupting the ceremony. Besides, he was hoping to be able to fight against some of its disciples for the sake of achieving enlightenment. But reality had been different because Lu Lan had appeared unexpectedly. How could Lin Feng let him carry out a suicide attack in the name of justice when his action would have had nothing to do with justice? Lin Feng found out that his words gave Duan Tian Lang the impression that he was being slapped in the face. Lin Feng was quite satisfied even if he thought that it was not near enough punishment for him. General, in this world, justice can be protected if you are powerful, but for that you need to be alive. So please take care of yourself, and at the right moment, you will be able to fight for justice, said Lin Feng to Lu Lan, who was surprised. Remember to keep growing stronger. Take care of yourself, only then you can fight for justice. Only those who could understand such things could be really free in the world. Lu Lan had come on that day to show that Duan Tian Lang had unfairly destroyed the Yunhai sect. Because of his past in the Yunhai sect, he felt like he had to avenge it. He thought that it was the right thing to do. However, in Lin Feng's eyes, Lu Lan's behavior was just blind devotion and nothing more. If Lu Lan acted recklessly and caused his own death, then wouldn't that make the enemy happy? How could that avenge those who unfairly died at their hands? He was just acting like a desperate man with no other course of action. General, just leave, said Lin Feng. At that moment, Lu Lan slightly nodded. Would you like to come with me for a walk? Asked Lu Lan to Lin Feng. Lin Feng was surprised and then said, all right. After all the trouble you caused today, do you think that you can leave that easily? Said Duan Tian Lang, who looked furious. They had humiliated him and the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. I'm taking him for a walk. Who will dare and oppose me? Said Lu Lan while glancing at Duan Tian Lang. At that moment, Lu Lan looked like the real divine arrow Lu Lan. At the beginning, Lu Lan wanted to fight but hadn't yet initiated a full-blown conflict. Since Lu Lan wasn't provoking him anymore and hadn't committed any offense, Duan Tian Lang couldn't do anything. Lu Lan, you came here without permission and on top of that caused trouble, don't forget that these are serious offenses, said Duan Tian Lang coldly. What makes you qualified to proclaim my faults? If His Majesty said that I had committed crimes and wanted to dismiss me, then I would accept his decision. You however are not qualified to speak against me, said Lu Lan indifferently. Duan Tian Lang pulled a long face. Dismiss him. Lu Lan was a very famous general with a great history on the battlefield. He had accomplished many wonderful things for the country. Give him a Qi Shui horse, said Lu Lan to one of his troops to his side. Immediately after, a soldier jumped down from his horse and climbed onto the same horse as one of the other soldiers while Lin Feng took his horse. Let's go, said Lu Lan to Lin Feng. Lin Feng was sitting on the Qi Xia armored horse. Before leaving, he nodded at Meng and the others. Lin Feng felt reassured because Meng was there to protect them. At that moment, Lin Feng passed near Lin Ba Dao and Lin Rui. He looked at them through his bronze mask. They were surprised and didn't understand why that masked man was looking so deeply at them. But at that moment Lin Feng and the other Qi Xia armored horses all left. Lin Ba Dao and Lin Rui, who were confused, just stared at these silhouettes while frowning. Their facial expression remained in an intense frown for a long time. The armored horses were galloping at great speed on an old and ancient road. At that moment, two horses were gradually slowing down. Lin Feng looked around. Milky white smoke could be seen coming from some chimneys in the distance. Surprisingly, they had come a small village. It wasn't that small either. The armored horses were galloping at great speed on an old and ancient road. At that moment, two horses were gradually slowing down. Lin Feng looked around. Milky white smoke could be seen coming from some chimneys in the distance. Surprisingly, they had come a small village. It wasn't that small either. In the continent of the 9 clouds, cultivators were respected and had the power, but there were many ordinary people who didn't have a spirit and who couldn't practice cultivation. Lin Feng, we have arrived at the border region of Duanren City, said Lu Zhanglan to Lin Feng, pointing at the city. We finally arrived, thought Lin Feng, seeing that they were getting closer and closer to the city. The Qixia armored horses were extremely fast, but as before, the Xue Yu country was still as vast as ever. Therefore, they had required 6 days to arrive in this city, which was situated in the north of the country. Duanren City. This road is weird. Everything is open and accessible. Anybody could attack and destroy it, said Lin Feng to Lu Zhanglan. They don't even think about that, replied Lu Zhanglan indifferently, which made Lin Feng shiver. They didn't think about that? In this city, it seemed like there were only ordinary people. They could easily be killed by even weak cultivators. Lin Feng, do you know how huge our continent is? I'm not sure, replied Lin Feng, shaking his head. The continent of the 9 clouds is extremely vast and has many countries. There is the Imperial country of Yu and our country, the Xue Yu country, which is inside Xue Yu, said Lu Zhanglan slowly, and then continued, Xue Yu has 13 countries, amongst which 4 of them are extremely large. Lin Feng was stupefied. He had never heard of Xue Yu. 13 countries, and the Xue Yu country was inside Xue Yu. Lin Feng didn't really understand what that meant. He didn't know what these territories looked like on a map. All of our countries are interconnected. There are agreements in place, and our Xue Yu country also respects these agreements. We wouldn't attack each other. However, in case that something like that happened, then the weak would probably become the prey of the strong. Being strong is one of the most important rules in the continent of the 9 clouds. However, every 10 years, the 13 countries choose the most outstanding disciples of their country and organize the Great Competition of Xue Yu. The Great Competition of Xue Yu consists of battles between these disciples. It is said that the winner can win an incredible amount of wealth and items. Besides, the winner has the opportunity to go to a mysterious and secret location to practice cultivation. The Great Competition of Xue Yu, a mysterious and secret location. Lin Feng was shivering. Maybe Luo Shui and Chu Zhanpeng had joined the holy courtyard of Xue Yu for that exact reason. Lin Feng was wondering if there was a correlation between what Lu Zhanglan was saying and the fact that these 2 high officials had chosen to study at the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. Nonetheless, there are some countries who wish they could become extremely strong and annex other territories. This is something that is made possible during the Great Competition of Xue Yu. Everything always comes down to power. If they manage to annex other territories, it means that they would gain power and have access to a greater number of outstanding talents. Many countries wish they could become the Imperial country. I see. Lin Feng would have never thought that countries would fight each other in the frame of a great competition. You should be able to understand now why they destroyed the Yunhai sect. That is why they are trying to put all their best disciples into one place, the holy courtyard of Xue Yu, said Lu Zhanglan. Lin Feng slightly nodded. They had built the holy courtyard of Xue Yu because they needed more outstanding disciples, and they needed to greatly increase the strength of the disciples in the country. They want to kill me because the sphere of influence of my army is too large. They destroyed the Yunhai sect because they want to unify the country under one banner. The other sects have been magnanimous, but at some point, the Imperial clan will probably start paying more attention to them and their fate will be the same as that of the Yunhai sect, said Lu Zhanglan while sighing. Lin Feng was feeling angrier and angrier. They definitely had their prey in sight. General, get down from your horses and come drink some water. At that moment, there were 2 people who had come from the village, and one of them was a woman. She was the one who had shouted these words to Lu Zhanglan. General, your hair. No time. We are in a hurry. We cannot stop, replied Lu Zhanglan to the woman while smiling. At that moment, many people were coming out of their houses and looking at Lu Zhanglan. Their eyes were filled with respect and admiration. Lin Feng was looking at Lu Zhanglan the same way. The masses had always feared the army, but these ordinary people were looking at Lu Zhanglan with respect and affection. He had managed to win the hearts of the people. Lin Feng found it unfortunate that they weren't in the previous world. Lin Feng thought that a person like Lu Lan could have become one of the most important people in his previous world. He could probably achieve great things. At that moment, another small town appeared in front Lin Feng. "General, you came back. Quickly, open the gate." Many people, when they saw that Lu Lan had come back, looked excited. A short moment after, a multitude of people came to the gate. "General," shouted the crowd loudly. They all knew that the Yunhai sect had been destroyed and that their general had left to the Imperial city because of those events. They were terrified by the idea that their general would maybe never come back. They were thus very happy to see him return safely. When Lu Lan saw all those people, he took a few deep breaths. His heart was filled with joy. These people were his people and their lives were in Lu Lan's hands. "I came back," said Lu Lan. He then urged his horse onwards and galloped into the town at full speed. He was moving so fast that the wind around him created whistling sounds as he passed through the air. Lin Feng's Qixia armored horse was closely following Lu Lan. This town wasn't exactly big and was only a small part of the territory. Lu Lan lived in another region of the city near another gate. Lu Lan hadn't arrived yet, but there was a silhouette on a horse was coming towards him. She was urging on her horse forwards using a whip. She was wearing fire-red robes. "Father!" Lu Fei's eyes were red and full of tears. Not many people understood why he had gone to the Imperial city. Lu Fei didn't understand clearly either. When she heard that her father had come back, she rushed over to see him with tears in her eyes. Lu Fei was worried about her father and thought that he may not return alive. "Fei," said Lu Lan. He seemed to be a very affectionate father as he looking lovingly at his daughter. Lu Fei looked at her father and a few seconds later, said, "Lu Lan, you're finally here. How could you be so stupid?" A soldier next to Lin Feng was surprised and couldn't help letting his shock escape his mouth. Lu Fei was really rude. Immediately after, Lu Lan smiled in an even more affectionate way. It was a wry smile though. After all, he was indeed really stupid sometimes. "Alright, Fei, I'm here, are you not happy that I have returned?" "You are feeling happy that you have returned, but I am still not happy." She said, galloped towards her father and said, "Father, promise me that you won't do something like this again in the future." "I won't," said Lu Lan while shaking his head. He then pointed at Lin Feng and said, Fei, you can thank him. He's the one who saved your old father from making a mistake which he could not come back from." "Huh?" Lu Fei looked at Lin Feng. That young man's robes were full of dirt because of the long journey they had taken to get here. Besides, his bronze mask looked terribly evil the more that one looked at it. The qi emanating from his body was very strange as well. "Father, who is this young man?" said Lu Fei while looking at Lin Feng with a perplexed face. Lu Lan laughed and said, "Don't you recognize him?" Lu Fei was stunned. Recognize him? She didn't know anyone who went around wearing a bronze mask. Lin Feng smiled and said as a joke, "What? Can you not even recognize your boyfriend?" When he finished talking, he took off his mask. When Lu Fei saw his face, her lips started to tremble. She was overwhelmed with all different kinds of emotions, but eventually a huge smile which was filled with warmth appeared and covered her face. Lin Feng. The one who was wearing that bronze mask, surprisingly was Lin Feng. And he was the person who had saved her father's life? Lin Feng. The one who was wearing that bronze mask, surprisingly was Lin Feng. And he was the person who had saved her father's life? Lu Lan looked at Lin Feng's face. He had met Lin Feng only twice and both times, he was wearing a bronze mask. It was the first time that he saw Lin Feng without his mask. He was smiling and seemed like a very good-natured person. Despite his age, he looked mysterious and mature. Only his mouth revealed a frivolous and unruly smile which showed that he probably had a good sense of humor as well. "How young," shouted Lu Lan, stupefied, and then whispered, "How mysterious he seems, almost mystical." The first time Lu Lan had seen Lin Feng had pronounced a few deep and mysterious sentences which had deeply influenced his thoughts and opinions. The second time that he had met him, Lin Feng had fearlessly contradicted Duan Tian Lang, leaving him dumbstruck and unable to reply. He had also damaged the reputation of the holy courtyard of Xue Yu. The one who had taken such brave actions inside the Imperial city was this smiling young man. These things didn't only require intelligence. They also required a person to be courageous, fearless, and quite audacious to dare make Duan Tian Lang lose face in front of so many people. It also required a person to be quite unconventional and unrestrained. Lu Lan would have never thought that such an extraordinary person could be so young. "Lin Feng, you just said that you are Lu Fei's boyfriend," suddenly said Lu Lan, recalling what Lin Feng had just said. He had a strange expression on his face and asked, "Is it true?" Lin Feng suddenly became very shy and scratched his head while remaining silent. Lu Fei was staring at him stunned. "Father, don't listen to that bastard. He's just a despicable pervert." At that moment, she was angry at Lin Feng for having dared say that he was her boyfriend in front of her father. How embarrassing. A despicable pervert. Lin Feng looked very awkward after hearing such words. He then resolutely said to Lu Fei, "Fei, are you not the one who asked me out and said that we were in a relationship in front of everyone the other day? If I'm a pervert, you are one as well." Lu Fei's eyes almost rolled. What a crazy bastard. Lu Lan's eyes were huge and wide open. He didn't understand what was going on at all. Lin Feng stared at Lu Fei's beautiful face, making her blush. Why had she started calling him a pervert again? While looking at both of them in such a strange situation, Lu Lan couldn't help but smile and said, Fei, that's all right, I have seen enough. Let's go now." Lu Fei angrily looked at Lin Feng and then made her horse turn around. The three of them were riding their horses. Suddenly, many of the soldiers of Lu Lan's army, when they saw Lin Feng with the group, started to approach them. The crowd suddenly kneeled down and bowed to the extent that their heads made a loud thud when colliding with the solid ground. Lin Feng was astonished and found it very strange, especially that these people were not prostrating themselves in front of Lu Lan, or Lu Fei, but in front of him. "Thank you for having saved our general's life." The people in the crowd were thanking Lin Feng one after another. Lin Feng was stupefied. "Please stand up." "There is no need to do such a thing," replied Lin Feng. These people were incredibly strong and had experienced many extraordinary things throughout their lifetime. How could they bow and worship Lin Feng? "Young man, you didn't save only our general's life but you also saved 200 Xia armored cavalry soldiers. If our general died, our town would probably be in danger and might be invaded. It means that you saved and protected many people's lives with your actions," said a soldier, looking solemn and grateful. Lin Feng was still surprised. He had never thought about these things. "Oh, I see, but that's enough, please stand up now." Lin Feng wasn't an arrogant person and everybody could see it. Everybody stood up when Lin Feng told them. They could see that he looked embarrassed from having so much attention on him. "That's all right, everybody can disperse now," said Lu Lan while waving to everyone. Everybody then quietly left. "Lin Feng, these people are not soldiers. They are officers. They are the best elements of my army. They can all lead groups of a few hundred people. I have only 500 officers. I trust them more than anyone else in the world. The soldiers who came with me to the Imperial city are all guards. You saved their lives. In the future, if there is an opportunity, they will be your assistants," said Lu Lan. Lin Feng was surprised and replied, "My assistants?" "Indeed, your assistants," said Lu Lan honestly while nodding. He then added, "You noticed that some people want to do me harm. At some point, they might succeed. If in the future you are also involved in these battles, then they will all come to help you. Lin Feng was smiling wryly. Who knew what would happen in the future? Lin Feng noticed the other gate of the town and sighed. They were in the very north of the country at the border with another country. If there was an attack someday, even if it wasn't supposed to happen, Lutsang Lan's territory would be the first one to be involved in battles. Fei Fei, you go first. Lin Feng and I are going on a walk, said Lutsang Lan to Lu Fei. Lu Fei was surprised and strangely stared at her father. All right, she said while nodding. She didn't ask her father for explanations and left. Lin Feng, let's walk to the gate, said Lutsang Lan while looking at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was also surprised. He didn't know why Lutsang Lan wanted Lu Fei to leave them alone. All right, said Lin Feng while nodding. They galloped towards the western gate of the city. There were lots of troops in that area. Even though they were looking at Lutsang Lan, they didn't move away from their respective positions. They got down off their horses and Lutsang Lan then brought Lin Feng towards a flight of stairs on the left of the gate. The flight of stairs led to the gate tower, which was very large. They went up all the way to the top of the tower. Lin Feng suddenly just felt an extremely strong and cold wind blowing on his face. Lin Feng then looked at the landscape and was completely amazed. Duanren City, the city of 1,000 blades, thought Lin Feng. In front of him was a vast field which looked boundless. There was a myriad of bladed weapons lying on the ground. Some of these weapons were already completely rusted and worn down over time. Since the battle, I have never given the order to remove these weapons from their positions. I rather prefer leaving them there in remembrance of those heroic souls, said Lutsang Lan slowly. He pointed his finger at the distance. It looked like a gigantic sword had cut a mountain into two. It strangely resembled the mountain where he could see sunlight shining in the Yunhai sect, the place where Lu Fei used to practice cultivation. That place was surrounded by a moat. As that natural moat was surrounded by high hills, it was easier for Lutsang Lan's troops to shoot at people who would try and come from that location. They were extremely vulnerable if they came from that location. That place is the border. If you were to go there, then there is a good chance that you will not make it back alive. It's called Duanren border. Duanren border. Logical, whispered Lin Feng. This is the border with the Mou country. The Mou country and our Xue Yu country are very different. In the Mou country, they don't have sects and they are completely united. Therefore, they are much stronger than us as they have a combined power. They have a huge army which is under a single banner. If they weren't scared of my army in Duanren City, they probably would have attacked a long time ago, said Lutsang Lan. That is why, Lutsang Lan, a long time ago had spared no effort and had fearlessly led his army into great battles. He had emerged victorious and created a legend which brought fear to his enemies. Lin Feng, you saw how dangerous the situation is for me. Someday, I will probably have my life taken from me, and I'm not speaking carelessly when I say this. Lin Feng understood why Lutsang Lan had abandoned the Yunhai sect in the past. He had left everything behind to protect his country from invaders. In the Xue Yu country, there were internal and external threats. The situation was extremely complex. Lin Feng, there is something that I would like to ask you. Lin Feng was stupefied. He was staring at Lutsang Lan. What could Lutsang Lan have to ask from him? Lutsang Lan slowly said, please take good care of Fei Fei. Take care of Lu Fei. Lin Feng first blankly stared at Lutsang Lan and then smiled wryly. It wasn't that easy to take care of Lu Fei. Take care of Lu Fei. Lin Feng first blankly stared at Lutsang Lan and then smiled wryly. It wasn't that easy to take care of Lu Fei. If only Lu Fei was similar to Meng Qing. But at that moment, Lin Feng was living with Meng Qing. What about Lu Fei? That was a difficult situation for Lin Feng. He didn't know what to do. Besides, Meng Qing wanted to take care of him and wanted for him to tell her stories all the time. Uncle Lu Lan, why do you trust me? When the Yunhai sect was destroyed, they all sacrificed their lives to protect you. If I can't trust you, then there is nobody in this world that I can trust, said Lu Lan while fixedly staring at Lin Feng. He then smiled and said, besides, I think that Fei and you are a very good match. If you want to take care of her forever, I have no objection to your union. Eh? Lin Feng was really stunned. Lu Lan was surprisingly trying to make Lin Feng and Lu Fei become engaged. Because of her incredible beauty, this offer would be hard to resist for any ordinary man. Of course, Lin Feng wasn't an ordinary man. Uncle Lu Lan, I am not that kind of person, but I have listened to what you have to say and I can promise you that I will do my best to take good care of her, replied Lin Feng in a low voice. Lu Lan smiled. He liked Lin Feng. He then said, I understand. I know that you are not that kind of person. Lin Feng, it is Lu Fei who expressed this. When Lin Feng heard Lu Lan's ambiguous words, he felt like crawling into a hole and disappearing from the world. He was extremely embarrassed. Maybe Lu Lan thought that what Lin Feng had meant when he said he was not that kind of person was that he wasn't talented enough when it came to women, but Lu Lan found it strange. But did Lin Feng have a choice? If he refused Lu Lan's offer, it would be too suspicious. When Lu Fei had heard her father tell her that he wanted to spend some time alone with Lin Feng, she felt incredibly furious in her heart. At that moment, Lin Feng and Lu Fei were in her house. Lu Fei angrily looked at Lin Feng and said, what did you tell my father? She remembered that Lin Feng had said that he was her boyfriend in front of her father. It was very possible that her father had misunderstood Lin Feng. At that moment, Lu Lan had asked Lu Fei to leave with Lin Feng without asking for her opinion and gave her no chance to respond. Poor Lin Feng. He didn't want to argue. He was just smiling wryly. Father, I'm not leaving, said Lu Fei while shaking her head and looking at her father. Don't make trouble, Fei. I have made this decision and I will not change my mind. I told Lin Feng to stay in Duanren City for 3 days. 3 days from now, you will both leave together, said Lu Lan strictly. He was extremely firm and strict with his words. Father, shouted Lu Fei, who wanted to say something else but was interrupted by Lu Lan. No. You have nothing to add. I am your father and you will listen to me. Lu Fei was shaking while staring at her father, which made Lu Lan want to take back his words and give her a choice, but he was convinced that Lu Fei had to leave, so he did not take back his words and stayed silent. I'm sorry. I will not disobey. Lu Fei didn't say anything else and ran towards her room with a bright red face. When Lu Lan saw Lu Fei run like this, he felt powerless. Lin Feng felt powerless as well. Because of all the problems Lu Lan had, he would constantly be worried to death if Lu Fei stayed. Some people are really heartless, thought Lin Feng. 3 days later, dust rose all around the galloping horses. Several hundreds of Qixia armored horses were galloping on that ancient road. Uncle Lu Lan, you can accompany us to here, we should be fine from this point on, said Lin Feng to Lu Lan. Their horses gradually slowed down and stopped. Lu Lan looked at Lu Fei. He looked reluctant to part with them. He also didn't know when they would meet again. Father, you can go back now, said Lu Fei reluctantly. She was gritting her teeth. Fei, please listen to Lin Feng, said Lu Lan while strictly staring at Lu Fei. Even though Lu Lan hadn't known Lin Feng for a long time, he knew that Lin Feng was extremely strong. He felt reassured to know that Lin Feng was there to take care of Lu Fei. Lu Fei glanced at Lin Feng, nodded and said, Father, I will. Take care of yourself, said Lu Lan while turning around and galloping away. Lin Feng, please take good care of her, shouted Lu Lan from far away. Sister, have a safe trip. Brother, have a safe trip. The cavalry on their Qixia armored horses shouted these words to Lu Fei and Lin Feng and left by following Lu Zhanglan. Lu Fei stared at them for a while, motionless. Lin Feng stayed next to her and remained silent. Yesterday, my father told me that he had abandoned the Yunhai sect in the past even though they had taught him so much. He thinks that he is responsible for the destruction of the Yunhai sect. He feels endless regret in his heart about the events which occurred. My father also told me that during the great battle against Duanren border, my mother had been killed. He hadn't even talked to her before she was killed. He feels extremely guilty. My father also said that because of the issues with the Duanren border, he hadn't had time to take care of me, which is why he had sent me to the Yunhai sect. Because he didn't assume his responsibilities as a father, he also said sorry to me, his daughter. My father also said that during the war of the Duanren border, he had lost many of his troops, 100,000 or more. They are buried outside of Duanren city and he is still alive. He feels regret in his heart that he could not save any of them. Lin Feng was calmly listening to Lu Fei. He found all these stories extremely complex. I know why my father wants me to leave. He doesn't want me to get involved. He feels sorry and regrets many things, but one thing I know is that the Xue Yu country should feel regret for what they did and are doing to him. They are the ones who should say sorry to him. Lin Feng raised his head and looked at the sky while listening to Lu Fei. Even if the Xue Yu country said sorry to him, that would never be enough. If Lin Feng was strong enough, he would go to the Imperial city and ask the Imperial clan how they feel about it. He was really curious to know how these people really felt from the bottom of their hearts. Only those who were strong enough could influence others. In that world, if someone was strong enough, he could destroy an entire country with a wave of his hand and no one would stand against him. Lin Feng would never understand why strength was so important in this land. If you want to cry, then you can go ahead. It's okay, said Lin Feng to Lu Fei in a soft and affectionate voice. Lu Fei had too much pressure. What a pity for such a beautiful 16-year-old girl. When Lu Fei heard Lin Feng's words, tears started unceasingly flowing along her beautiful soft cheeks. Suddenly, she started sobbing loudly. She was shaking. She could barely breathe from all the tears that endlessly fell from her eyes. Lin Feng smiled wryly. Girls were all the same. Enough pressure would make them cry even though they tried to hide it. Lin Feng made his horse go next to Lu Fei's one and put his hand on her shoulder. He then jumped down from his horse onto Lu Fei's horse and said, "It's okay, you can wipe your tears on me." Lu Fei turned around, looked at Lin Feng with her eyes full of tears and then pushed her face into his chest while sobbing in his arms. A while after, Lu Fei calmed down. She looked at Lin Feng and said, "You're a real pervert. You're taking advantage of the situation." Lin Feng was stupefied. What a moody girl. It seems like someone is in love with me, said Lin Feng. Lu Fei looked at him and said, "Get over yourself. You like manipulating people, don't you?" said Lin Feng while laughing. He then jumped back onto his Qi Shui armored horse. Lu Fei still had tears in her eyes and her face was red, but she didn't want Lin Feng to see her. "Let's go," said Lu Fei to Lin Feng. The Qi Xia armored horses immediately left as if they were able to understand the ones riding them. They left at full speed. Lin Feng smiled. Making Lu Fei listen to him was going to be such a difficult task. On the old and ancient road, a picturesque scene unfurled of a young handsome boy and an extremely beautiful young girl galloping on their horses, swiftly into the horizon. Outside of the Celestial Academy, 2 horses had appeared. At that moment, the recruitment procedure had already finished. Outside of the Celestial Academy, 2 horses had appeared. At that moment, the recruitment procedure had already finished. A crowd formed and started getting bigger and bigger. People were staring at these 2 Qi Xia armored horses and the 2 people who were on top of them. They were particularly interested in Lu Fei. "The Celestial Academy," said Lu Fei looking at the large gate. She then asked Lin Feng, "Why the hell did you bring me here?" "To practice cultivation, obviously," replied Lin Feng and then added, "Let's go inside." "I don't have a recommendation letter, besides, I will not join the Celestial Academy," said Lu Fei and then continued, "And you shouldn't either, are you forgetting about the Yunhai sect?" Lu Fei was Lu Lan's daughter, so she obviously knew about the Celestial Academy. "I haven't joined it either and I can bring you in without a letter of recommendation," said Lin Feng while shaking his head. He knew what Lu Fei meant. After so many people had sacrificed their lives to save him, including some elders, studying in another place would be a kind of betrayal to the Yunhai sect. "Don't forget that your father told you to listen to me," said Lin Feng. When he saw that Lu Fei wasn't reacting, he urged the horse forwards and went into the academy. Lu Fei looked at Lin Feng's silhouette and then galloped behind him. She was shocked by the fact that nobody prevented her from entering in the academy. "How did you do that?" asked Lu Fei. She clearly knew that the academy didn't allow anybody to penetrate into the territory of the academy. She didn't know why they would make an exception for her. How could it be that easy to enter? The only explanation was Lin Feng. Besides, he had said it himself a moment before, that she didn't need a letter of recommendation to enter. "Well, it's nothing extraordinary considering who my girlfriend is," Lin Feng said with a smile. Lu Fei angrily stared at him. "What are you looking like that for? I didn't say that you're my girlfriend." "I'm sorry, but it seems like your love for me is not reciprocated," said Lin Feng while arrogantly looking at Lu Fei. That girl thought too much. When she heard Lin Feng's words, she started shaking in anger. That damn bastard! It was the first time that Lu Fei went to the Celestial Academy. She found that the scenery was majestic and imposing. Lin Feng and Lu Fei had arrived outside of the palace where the students' rooms were located. He looked at Lu Fei and asked, "I guess you already know about the 3 different categories of cultivators that are studying at the academy. I know that it produced army officers, government officials and assassins. In Duanren City, my father's army is composed of many people who studied at the Celestial Academy. They are all very strong individuals. Many cultivators who studied here became strong Qi Xie protectors." Lin Feng looked surprised, looked at Lu Fei and said, "Qi Xie protectors? Uncle Lu lets them become protectors that easily?" The Qi Xie protectors were Lu Lan's closest troops. Besides, Lin Feng had asked himself before about the status of the people who graduated from the Celestial Academy. If they could become such prestigious cultivators, didn't it mean that the Imperial city had to be supporting it? Lu Fei was looking at Lin Feng as if she was looking at an idiot. "Do you think that my father is that kind of person?" Lin Feng smiled wryly. Indeed. Lu Lan could easily recognize people with high abilities. He wouldn't let anyone become a Qi Xie protector. Here is the place where those who study military skills stay. Even though we are not students of the academy, we have the right to live here. We can study about military skills and techniques. Lu Fei was astonished. She was really wondering how Lin Feng had achieved such a thing. She had asked him already but he didn't reply. She didn't feel like asking him again so she just nodded her head. When they arrived in Lin Feng's living quarters, Yuan Shan and Duan Feng were chatting. When they saw Lin Feng and Lu Fei, they were pleasantly surprised. "Lin Feng, big brother. Lin Feng, my friend." The two of them happily said Lin Feng's name in unison. Immediately after, they looked at Lu Fei. Yuan Shan looked at Lu Fei in an ambiguous way. "Lin Feng, big brother, who is she?" asked Duan Feng while looking at Lu Fei in such a way that gave the impression he was worshipping her. Meng Qing and Lin Feng had already decided to live together. How could Lin Feng go out and come back with a new amazingly beautiful girl? "Lu Fei," said a voice behind Duan Feng. Jing Yun walked towards them. When she saw that Lin Feng and Lu Fei were together, she made a strange face. In the Yunhai sect, Lu Fei was considered as the most beautiful girl. A countless number of men were courting her. Since the Yunhai sect had been destroyed, Jing Yun had thought that Lu Fei had died like the others. She wouldn't have thought she would see her again, especially with Lin Feng. Besides, on that day at the holy courtyard of Xue Yu, hadn't Lin Feng left with Lu Zhanglan? Lu Fei, the girl who possesses the divine arrow spirit, said Lin Feng. Duan Feng and Yuan Shan were stunned. That exceptionally beautiful girl was Lu Zhanglan's daughter. No wonder Lin Feng was with her. Jing Yun was even more astonished. She didn't know that she was Lu Zhanglan's daughter until that moment. "Hello," said Yuan Shan, whose expression had slightly changed. His eyes were suddenly filled with respect. Lu Zhanglan was one of the people whom Yuan Shan respected the most. Too bad that on the other day, he had only seen him from far away and hadn't been able to talk to him. He wished he could have followed Lin Feng and Lu Zhanglan. Yuan Shan wasn't the only person who was like that. Many disciples who were studying military skills also idolized Lu Zhanglan, who was a great general, who could kill people from very far away with incredible accuracy using his arrows. Lu Zhanglan. Many boys were very excited even if they only heard Lu Zhanglan's name. And Lu Fei was his daughter. When Lu Fei noticed Yuan Shan's fanaticism, her heart was filled with sorrow. Everybody knew how heroic and great Lu Zhanglan was, but nobody knew how difficult the situation was for him. Nobody knew that some people in the country wanted to eliminate him and take all of the power for themselves. "Lin Feng, I would like to rest," said Lu Fei calmly. Lin Feng sighed. He noticed that Lu Fei hadn't completely recovered. "Here, or do you want to choose your own place? There are many free apartments." "Choose one for yourself," said Lin Feng. "No need. I'm going to rest in your room," said Lu Fei calmly. Everyone was stunned. Lin Feng was even more stupefied. He was speechless. At that moment, he thought that the most complicated thing to understand in the world was women's logic. Lin Feng scratched his head and said, "It's not very convenient. You should definitely find your own place." "Don't worry, I don't mind." "Why would you?" said Lu Fei and continued, "Where is your place?" "That one," said Lin Feng, who had no alternative, while pointing towards his own room. At that moment, Yuan Shan quickly moved in front of Lin Feng's door and said while shaking his head, "You should choose another place." When Lin Feng saw that Yuan Shan was obstructing the way to his room, he was surprised. Everybody had a suspicious expression on their face. Then, Duan Feng and Jing Yun nodded their heads, indicating that they didn't approve Lu Fei staying in Lin Feng's room either. Nothing worked though. They hadn't managed to convince Lu Fei. "No need. I'll rest here." Lu Fei moved closer to Yuan Shan. Yuan Shan then said, "Lin Feng, my friend, you should get in there first." "All right," nodded Lin Feng. He moved towards the big stone door, opened it and entered his room. Lu Fei followed him. "Who's that? What a terrifying strength," thought Lin Feng. At that moment, an extremely strong qi came out and crashed onto Lin Feng's body. He almost fell down. At that moment, Lin Feng understood why Yuan Shan had told him to enter first. "How kind." "It's me," shouted Lin Feng. Suddenly, the qi disappeared. Lu Fei was standing behind Lin Feng and shaking from head to toe. That oppressive qi a moment ago had almost made her collapse. What a powerful strength. Yuan Shan was outside of the room and had a wry smile on his face. Fortunately, he had asked Lin Feng to enter first. That rumbling sound emitted by the release of that strong qi had resonated in the entire palace. His heart was still fluttering with fear. That girl was terrifyingly strong. "How come you didn't come back earlier?" asked Meng coldly from the back of the room. Meng was still wearing a fine veil on her face as well as her beautiful white robes. She looked so divine, as if she was above the material things of this world. She still looked extremely beautiful. When Lu Fei saw Meng Qing, it seemed her eyes were about to pop from their sockets. At the same time, when Meng Qing saw Lu Fei, her eyes shook for a second and suddenly her eyebrows seemed to indicate that she was extremely unhappy. But very quickly, Meng Qing stopped looking at Lu Fei and calmly looked at Lin Feng. Right after that, she went into a small room of the living quarters and closed the door. But very quickly, Meng Qing stopped looking at Lu Fei and calmly looked at Lin Feng. Right after that, she went into a small room of the living quarters and closed the door. Meng Qing's reaction made Lin Feng smile wryly. From Meng Qing's cold and detached reaction, Lin Feng couldn't guess what she was thinking. He had no idea what she was feeling in her heart. Lin Feng, you're a real bastard. Lu Fei was biting on her lips and looked at Lin Feng with her eyes filled with sadness. She then immediately left the living quarters. Lin Feng was puzzled. Millions of questions passed through his mind. Wasn't she a bit moody? How could she look at him with such eyes? She looked completely heartbroken. Could it be that she really liked him? Lin Feng was lost and didn't understand anything anymore, so he was just smiling wryly. Women's hearts were really incomprehensible for him. Of course Lin Feng didn't understand Lu Fei's inner thoughts. When Lu Lan had asked Lin Feng to take of Lu Fei, his purpose was to make them more intimate by spending longer periods of time with each other. Lu Lan didn't know how long he would be able to stay alive. He was in great danger after all. The only person Lu Fei could rely on if he died was Lin Feng. Even though they didn't like each other at the beginning because of a few misunderstandings, afterwards Lin Feng had shown that he was the kind of person that she could believe in. He had displayed outstanding physical abilities and was very enlightened on spiritual matters. While getting to know Lin Feng, Lu Fei had gradually forgotten about all of the bad things she thought about Lin Feng originally. Especially, when he left the Yunhai sect on the day of the bloodbath, she had only thought positive things about Lin Feng. Lu Fei already had feelings for Lin Feng, which is why she had accepted to listen to her father and follow Lin Feng. Besides, deep in her heart, she was starting to get used to being together with Lin Feng. Therefore, she found it very normal to live alone with Lin Feng. But when Lu Fei opened the door of Lin Feng's living quarters, the first thing she was a girl, and on top of that, an incredibly beautiful girl. She felt like her heart was broken, which is why she had rushed out of the living quarters. She couldn't stand it any longer. Lin Feng, whom are you going to comfort first? The one inside? Or are you going to chase the other one outside? Asked Yuan Shan, who was standing outside. Lin Feng frowned after hearing his words. I should go and talk to Lu Fei first, thought Lin Feng. Lu Fei was still particularly vulnerable because of all the things that had happened, including those with her father. Lin Feng was really worried about her. Lin Feng went out, jumped through the air and tried to catch up with Lu Fei. She was heading towards the exit. She seemed like she was really angry and wasn't even saying a word. Lin Feng followed her and finally caught up with her. At that moment, they were already outside of the ancient palace. Why are you doing this to me? Asked Lu Fei to Lin Feng. She looked at him with an ice-cold glare. Lin Feng clearly noticed that she was jealous. Lin Feng was feeling weird deep in his heart. He had never felt in love during his lifetime, so he didn't know what it felt like, but at that moment, delicate and subtle emotions filled his heart. Lin Feng remained speechless and was just fixedly staring at Lu Fei while walking with her. I asked you a question, said Lu Fei, glaring at Lin Feng. Lin Feng was still staring at her. Lu Fei was stupefied. What the hell was he looking at? Do you like me? Said Lin Feng in a small and weak voice while scratching his head. Lu Fei was startled with surprise and almost fell down. She turned around, blinked and looked at Lin Feng. Suddenly, she started laughing loudly. Me? Like you? In your dreams, replied Lu Fei coldly. She then turned around and walked at a faster pace. She had never had such feelings and emotions before. Her heart was pounding extremely fast. Really? Said Lin Feng, surprised. Could it be that he had just imagined it? Lu Fei, stop walking away please, shouted Lin Feng to Lu Fei, who was moving farther and farther away. Lu Fei suddenly stopped walking. Don't forget what you promised to your father. You must listen to me, said Lin Feng impolitely. Lu Fei obviously found it hard to turn around. She gnashed her teeth while furiously looking at Lin Feng. That bastard was using her promise to her dad as an excuse. But at that moment, Lin Feng walked up to her. When he arrived next to her, his hand grabbed Lu Fei's hand and he said, "Let's go back, all right?" Lin Feng was holding her hand so tightly that she couldn't get away from him. That bastard was using strength against her. As she couldn't break her hand free from his, she just angrily glared at him. Relax now. Lin Feng was proud of himself. Coping with women wasn't an easy thing, but Lu Fei was being docile at that moment. Of course, he wouldn't be able to do the same thing with Meng Qing. If he tried to use force against her, she would probably attack him and in the blink of an eye he would be sent flying. A short time after, Yuan Shan and Duan Feng saw Lin Feng and Lu Fei coming back hand in hand. When they saw that Lu Fei wasn't struggling and was holding his hand too, they were astonished. They looked at Lin Feng in a way which looked like they were worshipping his prowess with women. What a truly talented young man. There are many rooms in my living quarters, you can choose one and stay there. If you don't agree, you can live with Jing Yun, said Lin Feng, releasing Lu Fei's hand. Who would want to live in the living quarters of a bastard like you? Said Lu Fei, looking at Lin Feng with cruel eyes. Lin Feng suddenly felt relieved though and had the feeling that Lu Fei had returned to her usual self. Uncle Lu had asked him to take care of her. It seemed like better days would be in the future because today he felt terrible. Lin Feng shook his head and went back into his apartment. He moved towards the room in which Meng Qing was and softly knocked at her door. There was no reply for a few seconds and then Lin Feng heard Meng Qing's voice from behind the door say, "I want to have a rest. Go and have fun with her." Lin Feng was smiling wryly. Could it be that the divine and spiritual Meng Qing was jealous? But Lin Feng quickly refuted the idea that she could be jealous. Meng Qing always gave the impression that she had a stone-cold heart. Lin Feng never knew what she was thinking. "I said that I wanted to rest." "Leave now," shouted Meng Qing from inside the room. Lin Feng was stupefied. What was going on? What was wrong with her? Meng Qing had always sounded cold and detached. Her mood seemed to never really change, but at that moment, she almost sounded angry. "Meng Qing," said Lin Feng again, but Meng Qing immediately interrupted him and said, "Go away." Something was wrong. A light twinkled in Lin Feng's eyes. There was obviously something wrong. Lin Feng resolutely pushed the door of her room but it didn't open. It seemed to be locked from inside. Lin Feng pushed the door with all his strength and eventually managed to open it. He then immediately entered the room. Lin Feng just felt an extremely strong and cold qi starting to oppress his body. How scary! The scariest was that qi filled the entire room. Lin Feng's pupils shrank. He glanced at the room and then at the simple bed. Meng Qing was sitting on her bed. Lin Feng was stunned when he saw her. Meng Qing was shivering and her body was covered with a layer of frost. Meng Qing's beautiful hair was entirely white as it was covered with frost. "What's wrong?" cried out Lin Feng in alarm. Meng Qing raised her head. Maybe that she was just too cold from the frost. She moved her lips but no words came out of her mouth. "Meng Qing, are you all right? Tell me what's wrong," said Lin Feng while walking towards the bed. Lin Feng felt even colder as if his entire body was going to freeze. It was too cold but the coldness didn't come from outside, it came from Meng Qing's body. "Go away. Don't come here," said Meng Qing with a shaking voice. Lin Feng sensed a strong pain in her words. He recalled the strong and cold qi that had fallen onto his body a moment before when he had entered the room. At that moment, Meng Qing's body was releasing some ice-cold qi, but as always, she was trying to act as if nothing had happened. Meng Qing didn't want to tell Lin Feng what was going on. Lin Feng took a few steps towards her bed and finally reached the edge of it. Suddenly, frost started spreading from his hands and started to cover his whole body. In the blink of an eye, he looked exactly like Meng Qing, covered with frost. He had also started to shiver. But he looked determined as ever. Lin Feng was getting closer and closer to Meng Qing. As he was getting nearer, he also felt a more extreme amount of cold piercing through his body. At some point, he wanted to touch her shoulder with his hand and realized that his fingers were completely frozen. He couldn't move them anymore. Lin Feng was getting closer and closer to Meng Qing. As he was getting nearer, he also felt a more extreme amount of cold piercing through his body. At some point, he wanted to touch her shoulder with his hand and realized that his fingers were completely frozen. He couldn't move them anymore. "Leave," said Meng Qing with a hoarse voice. After a short time, her body stopped releasing a cold qi. She couldn't stand seeing Lin Feng like that. It made her feel sad deep in her heart. "You silly girl. Every time, you're the one who protects me. I lose face each time," said Lin Feng while smiling. His eyebrows were completely white. At that moment, a pure qi landed on his body and suddenly, he didn't feel so cold anymore. The frost also instantly vanished. Lin Feng then moved closer to Meng Qing. Meng Qing saw that Lin Feng had a smile on his face even when he was starting to freeze over from head to toe. That smile remained on his face and he continued to smile warmly at her. "I hope you won't blame me," said Lin Feng while smiling. He then stretched his arms towards Meng Qing and tried to hug her. Suddenly, he felt a piercing coldness invade his body and in the blink of an eye, he was completely frozen once again. Meng Qing's body looked it was frozen solid in ice. This type of cold could make people suffocate from the piercing sting on the lungs. It was incredibly hard to breathe. Suddenly, a stone appeared around Lin Feng's body. In that stone, there were all the things that were contained within the temple of the Yunhai sect. Lin Feng's eyes were closed. He released his spirit and suddenly, the world which appeared around him wasn't dark as it used to be, it was entirely white covered with snow and it was also extremely cold. Swallow. Lin Feng, after releasing his celestial spirit, started absorbing and swallowing the pure qi of the purity stone. He was both exhaling and inhaling the pure qi at the same time, which was one of the abilities his celestial spirit provided. Meng Qing blinked and attentively looked at Lin Feng's delicate and beautiful face. She wasn't moving anymore either. She was just staring at Lin Feng's closed eyes while still releasing cold qi, which was immediately crashing onto Lin Feng's body. It seemed like time had stopped. The ice on Lin Feng's body was getting thicker and thicker. Half of his body was already completely rigid because of the ice. His breath was also slower and slower. Besides, more than half of the pure qi of his purity stone had already been consumed. Even in that situation, Lin Feng was aware that his body was becoming colder and colder and that the ice covering his body was getting thicker and thicker. He was also aware of the fact that the pure qi of the purity stone wasn't sufficient to help him break through. He suddenly couldn't do anything anymore and just let the ice invade his body. At that moment, Meng Qing stopped releasing cold qi. Her entire body snuggled against Lin Feng. At that moment, she didn't look like an ice-cold divine goddess anymore. She looked like a pitiful young girl who was consumed with sadness. How cold! At that moment, Lin Feng felt like he couldn't resist the coldness anymore. It seemed like the ice was about to freeze his muscles and blood. He was frozen stiff from the cold qi which had pierced his entire body. "I cannot give up, I have to persevere." But willpower and determination weren't enough. Lin Feng was frozen stiff and unable to move, no matter how hard he tried. He was shivering from head to toe and his teeth were chattering from the cold. The coldness was starting to penetrate into Lin Feng's blood, but at that moment, his soul started vibrating. He was suddenly filled with a very familiar sensation. That's my spirit. My snake spirit. Lin Feng's heart was pounding. The sensation he had at that moment was the same as when he had almost been killed by the imaginary demon. My snake spirit has woken up. Hisses. Lin Feng heard his snake spirit hiss. It then opened its huge mouth and started uninterruptedly swallowing cold qi. Oddly enough, my snake spirit is also able to swallow that ice-cold qi. Lin Feng's heart was pounding. His pupils shrank as he watched his snake spirit swallow unimaginable quantities of cold qi. That was a scary thing to watch. The cold qi which filled the entire room was being swallowed by the snake. The room was becoming less and less cold with each passing moment. An illusionary group of icicles suddenly appeared behind Lin Feng. It was extremely powerful and cold, but it couldn't affect either Lin Feng or Meng Qing because Lin Feng could control it. An ice spirit replaced my imaginary demon spirit. Lin Feng opened his mouth. He was completely stunned after noticing the change. It was just like the last time when he was in danger. After his snake spirit had finished eating, whatever it ate would appear behind Lin Feng and become an additional spirit. Last time, the imaginary demon spirit had appeared behind Lin Feng because his snake spirit had swallowed it. This time, it had swallowed large amounts of ice qi and a new ice spirit appeared behind his back replacing the imaginary demon spirit. Lin Feng's snake spirit was so incredible that it made him scared. Lin Feng's snake spirit had almost finished swallowing the entirety of the cold qi within the atmosphere. His ice spirit was becoming much stronger and colder. The more qi which was swallowed, the stronger the spirit was becoming. Besides, his snake was growing bigger and bigger as it swallowed the cold qi. Finally, the cold qi completely disappeared from the room. At that moment, the ice had even disappeared from Meng Qing's body. No ice was being released by her body any longer. It had even started to get warm in the room. Suddenly, she closed her eyes and fell asleep. She needed to rest. She was emotionally exhausted after such events. At that moment, Lin Feng looked at the sleeping beauty. A big smile appeared on Lin Feng's face and his heart started beating faster. I became stronger yet again. Lin Feng was able to detect that he had become stronger, which made him smile. Even though he had been able to survive by the skin of his teeth, he felt very satisfied. Lin Feng didn't bother Meng Qing. He closed his eyes and started meditating. Deep in meditation, Lin Feng realized that his strength was still insufficient. He needed to increase his practice and grow stronger faster. He had not spent enough time increasing his strength in the past days. There were many other countries in the continent and many other outstanding cultivators. If he did not work hard, then he would fall behind. Not aware of how much time had passed, Meng Qing's hands started moving. She slowly opened her eyes and saw that the cold qi had completely disappeared from the room. Besides, her head was still against Lin Feng's comfortable and warm body. She then blinked twice. She looked perplexed at how such a situation had come about. She immediately sat up and saw that Lin Feng's eyes were closed and that he was meditating. She was surprised. Lin Feng had felt something change within the room. He stopped meditating and opened his eyes. He looked at Meng Qing in a tender way and smiled. You have finally woken up. Yes, nodded Meng Qing. She looked at Lin Feng and asked, looking dumbstruck, how did you do that? I had a beautiful girl against me, so I forgot about the coldness. Then, I ended up like this, said Lin Feng while smiling. She looked at Lin Feng but wasn't sure how to interpret what he meant. These easily said words still made her feel slightly better though. Even if she hadn't used all her strength when releasing that terrifyingly cold qi, Lin Feng was able to resist to such an attack. It was impossible, but he had still done it, so how was that possible? Even though Lin Feng didn't tell her, she quickly stopped asking herself that question and said to Lin Feng, "What do you think you are doing still sitting here?" Said Lin Feng while blinking. Was every woman like this? Aggressive to the ones that they care about? I am worried about you, so I want to be here in case you needed me, replied Lin Feng in a low voice. Now, there is no ice on my body anymore. How long do you plan to continue hugging me? Asked Meng Qing, fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Her voice sounded cold and indifferent again. Lin Feng frowned. He then immediately stood up and left her room. That girl was way too smart. What Lin Feng didn't see because he had left her room already is that Meng Qing was blushing. At that moment, anyone who would have seen her would have been astonished to see her face was bright red. In the middle of the ancient palace where the students lived, there was a very high tower. It was a place dedicated to the practicing of cultivation. Students could clearly see the sky when standing in that tower. The tower was a good place to practice cultivation because the natural energy that pulsated through it, the qi of heaven and earth, were perfectly interconnected at this location. In the middle of the ancient palace where the students lived, there was a very high tower. It was a place dedicated to the practicing of cultivation. Students could clearly see the sky when standing in that tower. The tower was a good place to practice cultivation because the natural energy that pulsated through it, the qi of heaven and earth, were perfectly interconnected at this location. In the Celestial Academy, there were 3 other towers which were similar to this one. Those studying governmental affairs and those studying to become assassins also had their own towers. As far as the 4th is concerned, it was on the main public square of the academy and it was also the highest one. Lin Feng, the teacher gave us our first task while you were away. We have to practice our cultivation in the tower for a minimum of 3 months, said Yuan Shan. Lin Feng and the others were standing outside of the cultivation tower. They were all staring at the tower and Yuan Shan said, in simple words, that tower is a perfect place to practice because of its abundance of pure qi coming from heaven and earth to that location. The pure qi of heaven and earth is flowing in what forms an endless stream of energy to that location. This energy is the same as those which flow in the veins of the earth. The inside of the tower is perfect for cultivation because the qi is much denser and flows freely into the tower. Managing to build 4 towers in which there is such a perfect stream of pure qi is really masterful work, said Lin Feng, who could already feel some of pure qi coming from the ground all around the outside of tower. Besides, if we don't count the palace where the Imperial clan lives, the academy is the place where there is the most pure qi. Even the holy courtyard of Xue Yu only has 2 locations in which to build these towers. It is also very difficult to find places where there is pure qi which circulates into the flow. Even the biggest sects usually don't even have any. Actually, this is one of the reasons why the Imperial clan is so strong, because they possess an incredible quantity of pure qi. Lin Feng nodded. Pure qi was a thing cultivators longed for day and night. Even in the Yunhai sect, there wasn't even a single location which contained the flow of pure qi. It seems like the Celestial Academy really has a scary amount of resources, thought Lin Feng. Even though the academy wasn't famous because it was very secretive in how it recruited its new students, it seemed like it was more powerful than Lin Feng had ever imagined. The academy required a letter of recommendation, which was a difficult thing to obtain. Besides, it trains students for 3 specific functions: commanders, government officials and assassins. In all of these cases, these kinds of functions were extraordinary and were absolutely detached from the daily life of ordinary people. Lin Feng and the others went inside the tower. Inside, there were some rooms and some of them were closed as they were already occupied by other people. Lin Feng could feel the pure qi of the earth penetrating into his feet and invading his entire body. It was quite an intense experience which he almost found scary. He was not cultivating and the qi was already attempting to penetrate into his body. Let's go upstairs. Hope we can find some space to practice. Maybe we will get stuck on the last floor, said Yuan Shan. Unfortunately, the best place to practice in the tower was the ground floor. The closer to the ground, the better the quality of qi would be. As you moved higher and higher, it had slightly less earth qi circulating. Obviously, the pure qi of the earth was coming from the ground, so it was also the place where it was the most intense. Lin Feng nodded and they all walked towards the higher floors. The higher they were getting, the rarer pure qi became. The tower was also getting narrower as they went to higher floors in the tower. Lin Feng looked at a room on the 10th floor. They were extremely small and could probably accommodate only 2 people at once. If a person wanted to move inside these rooms, then it was not convenient as there really was not enough space. There was a young man in black robes was sitting outside the room on the 10th floor and his eyes were closed. "What is he doing?" asked Lin Feng surprised. That young man in black robes was practicing outside of the room even though there was a spare one free. How could he enter in a state of meditation in such an open place? Yuan Shan looked at Lin Feng, stopped walking and said, "You need a purity stone to enter the room. Many people don't have one, and even if they do, they don't want to take it out. They prefer using other people's stones." When Lin Feng heard Yuan Shan, he made a strange face. Use other people's stones? They wait for people to come and use their purity stones, and then they consume the pure qi from other people's stones from outside the room. At that moment, the young man in black robes suddenly opened his eyes and coldly looked at Yuan Shan. "Since you know how things work, then no need to talk bullshit. If you want to use the room, use it. If you don't feel like it, then don't use it. Get the hell out if you are going to waste my time," coldly said the young man in black robes. He was being extremely rude. Lin Feng and the others were stupefied. Jing Yun then opened her mouth. "Yuan Shan, doesn't the academy care about such things?" The young man in black robes looked at Jing Yun as if she was an absolute idiot. "The academy care about such things? How ridiculous." "Jing Yun, did the Yun Hai sect care when people fought?" said Lin Feng. Jing Yun slightly nodded. Academies and sects were about getting stronger. The weak were the prey of the strong. Who would care about such things? Get the hell out of here. You're disturbing me while I'm trying to meditate, said the young boy in black robes who was getting impatient. Some of the senior students didn't understand the rules of the academy, which stipulated older students should guide the newer students. Lin Feng, let's leave. If he dares to stay here and wait for other people to come practice, then he must have broken through to at least the 3rd Ling Qi layer. Let's continue onwards, said Yuan Shan to Lin Feng. Meng Qing didn't follow him because Yuan Shan thought they were weak. Since he was wrong, she didn't feel like following him. Lin Feng was motionless. He was standing at the same place. 3rd Ling Qi layer. Perfect. I was looking for someone of the 3rd Ling Qi layer. Thought Lin Feng, since there's a room here, why not use it? Why should we continue onwards, said Lin Feng. Everybody was surprised, especially the young man in black robes who had already started meditating. Everybody looked interested in what Lin Feng planned to do all of a sudden. New students overestimate their own abilities. They think that they are extremely strong because they are students that were accepted into the academy, said the young man while looking more and more impatient. Practicing on the highest floors of the tower wasn't a cheap thing to do. They needed to bring at least 3 purity stones with them. If they cultivated there for a month, they needed to bring at least 100 purity stones with them. Lin Feng, don't attack him, said Yuan Shan. They were going to stay there for 3 months, so they would need 200 or 300 purity stones. That was a huge number and they didn't have that many. The best they could do was find a room with a smaller cultivation requirement. No problem, said Lin Feng. Since that guy wanted to take advantage of others, Lin Feng wanted to see if he really had the strength for that. Lin Feng walked towards the entrance of the room. Next to the entrance, there was a hole in the wall. Is it where you have to insert the purity stone? Asked Lin Feng to Yuan Shan. Yuan Shan nodded his head and replied, indeed. It's the same for every room. Inserting a purity stone in that hole then enables you to fully enjoy the functionalities of the room. The veins of the earth fills the entire room with pure qi, making it a perfect place for cultivation. What an intriguing method, thought Lin Feng. He then nodded and said to Yuan Shan, if I practice here for 3 months, how many stones do I need? That should be 3 purity stones of lower quality each day. 3 purity stones of lower quality. Lin Feng smiled wryly. As expected, cultivation required wealth. Purity stones were precious items to cultivators. Only cultivators who had reached the Ling Qi layer could use purity stones to their maximum effect. It was almost impossible to obtain a great number of purity stones. Lin Feng took something out of one of his pockets. Suddenly, an extremely dense and strong pure qi emerged in the atmosphere. Yuan Shan was astonished. Purity stone of medium quality. Lin Feng surprisingly had purity stones of medium quality. Are 3 purity stones of medium quality enough? Asked Lin Feng. Of course. 1 purity stone of medium quality is the equivalent of 100 purity stones of lower quality. Besides, they also produce a much stronger and purer qi, said Yuan Shan while nodding. The young man in black robes had a look filled with greed across his face. That new guy had purity stones of medium quality. He would just easily take them and then use the room himself. Lin Feng didn't pay attention to the expression of the young man in black robes. He immediately inserted his 3 purity stones of medium quality. Lin Feng didn't pay attention to the expression of the young man in black robes. He immediately inserted his 3 purity stones of medium quality. At that moment, a thick and intensely powerful pure qi started flowing into the room. It was extremely bright and a magnificent sight. It looked like there was a miniature sun that had awoken in the room. It was similar for everybody else in the other rooms. The young man in black robes had a strange expression on his face, almost evil. He immediately moved towards Lin Feng's cultivation room. There was only Lin Feng in the room, so he wasn't scared. That room was appropriate for only 1 person at a time. If there was more than 1 person in the room, they would disturb each other during cultivation. Yuan Shan moved towards the young man in black robes and blocked the way to Lin Feng's room. If the young man in black robes tried to steal Lin Feng's room, Yuan Shan would have no choice but to attack him. He was intensely staring at the young man in black robes. 3 purity stones of medium quality, that was too valuable of a treasure. Rumbling noises spread through the air. Thrum boom boom, the stone door opened. The young man in black robes was surprised and said to Yuan Shan, "Get the hell out of my way." Suddenly, Yuan Shan was suffocating. As expected, the young man in black robes was at the 3rd Ling Qi layer and was extremely strong, even in comparison with other cultivators of the same level. His pressure was extremely powerful. Yuan Shan knew that he wouldn't be able to compete with him if he was to fight. It was taking everything that he had to stay standing. "Get back," said a voice. At that moment, the temperature outside of Lin Feng's room suddenly dropped. There was an icy cold pressure which filled the air. Yuan Shan was freezing from the qi which penetrated the air around him. Boom! Suddenly, the young man in black robes took a few steps backwards and Lin Feng had appeared next to Yuan Shan. Lin Feng, how powerful! Yuan Shan's pupils shrunk from shock. He wouldn't have thought that Lin Feng would be strong enough to make the young man in black robes retreat backwards. No wonder Lin Feng didn't care about the young man sitting there when he entered the room. The young man in black robes was stupefied as well. He looked at his own hand and saw that it had turned snow white. Frost was covering it and he could barely move it. His hand had been almost frozen solid from that initial encounter. The ice on his hands suddenly cracked and the pieces of ice fell onto the floor. He was fixedly staring at Lin Feng. Lin Feng didn't look very powerful, but he had surprisingly also broken through to the 3rd Ling Qi layer. "Now, get the hell out of here," said Lin Feng. Lin Feng wasn't aggressive to other people unless they were aggressive to him. Picking his fights carefully would allow him to live a long life and avoid meaninglessly insulting someone. However, one needed strength in this world to be respected and could not back down from a fight. The young man in black robes was furious. Even though Lin Feng had also broken through to the third Ling Qi layer. How could he possibly disrespect him in such a blatant way? Suddenly, huge flames appeared behind the young man and he released his spirit. What astonished everyone is that the flames were filled with a black color inside. "My spirit is a black flame fire spirit," said the young man in black robes coldly. At that moment, his eyes looked like they were on fire and burning brightly, however his gaze was completely cold and bloodthirsty. Black flame fire spirit. Yuan Shan was stupefied. He had never heard of such a fire spirit before. The black flame fire spirit was a fire spirit, but it was clearly a rare fire spirit. The rarer a spirit was, the greater its power would be. Surprisingly, the young man possessed an extremely rare spirit which even Yuan Shan did not know. His spirit, coupled with his strength of the third Ling Qi layer, he could be considered as an extremely strong cultivator within the tower. Lin Feng was coldly looking at him. Layers of ice appeared on Lin Feng's body. The air around him was freezing. Black flame fire spirit, how powerful. "Wow, it really looks hot," said Lin Feng and then immediately started walking forwards. Suddenly, an incredible amount of ice started emerging from Lin Feng's body. Everything around him was freezing. Even the air was freezing in place and the atmosphere had become chillingly cold. Yuan Shan, who wasn't far from Lin Feng, was shivering from how cold it had become. His ears were stinging from the coldness in the air. "That's a normal ice spirit," thought Yuan Shan. He then immediately shook his head and said, "Impossible. That's not a normal ice spirit. Ice spirits are not that cold." While the young man in black robes sensed the coldness emanating out of Lin Feng's body, he was also surprised. It was even too cold for his black flame fire spirit, which started fluttering as it was slowly being extinguished by the cold as it grew closer. Usually, fire spirits had the advantage over ice spirits. But Lin Feng's ice spirit was obviously terrifyingly powerful compared to normal ice spirits. Lin Feng thought that his ice spirit was particularly strong because it had been transmitted directly from Meng Qing's qi into him. 8 strikes of desolation. Lin Feng raised one hand and thrust it towards the young man as he carried out his attack. It was still freezing all around him as his hands swiftly moved through the frozen air. "Fire fangs," shouted the young man in black robes. His spirit moved at the same time as his hands. The young man's attack moved straight towards Lin Feng's cold qi. Suddenly, sword qi started to fill the atmosphere. It was extremely powerful and seemed like it could annihilate the entirety of creation. Lin Feng's cold qi seemed to be sufficient to freeze anyone into a block of ice who moved close to him. The sword qi was so sharp it felt like it would cut anything it encountered into pieces. The cold qi and the sword qi invaded the atmosphere together as a single entity. At that moment, the young man in black robes could feel that he had been marked for death. His entire soul was shaking in fear. How is this possible? He has an ice spirit, how could he release such an insanely strong sword qi, and I can even sense sword force combined with his qi. The young man was shaking from head to toe with complete terror. His knees had already gone weak and he was about to collapse from fear. Lin Feng took another step forwards. "Get lost," shouted Lin Feng. At that moment, sword qi crashed into the young man's body. A trail of blood flew through the air. The young man in black robes groaned and then collapsed onto the floor. He was looking at Lin Feng with murderous eyes. "You dare to injure me? I don't have time to waste talking with you, get out of here." Lin Feng took another step forward. The young man in black robes was terrified. Suddenly, his body emitted a dazzling light and he vanished without leaving a single trace. "You'll pay for what you did," said a voice as it retreated. Lin Feng laughed. How could that guy talk such nonsense? Yuan Shan was staring at Lin Feng but remained silent. He was smiling wryly. What a monstrous power. Lin Feng had an ice spirit but used the skill 8 strikes of desolation and released sword chi. How terrifying. He could even use sword force. Even those who had a sword spirit couldn't use sword force to such an incredible level when they had the strength of the Ling Qi layer. Lin Feng was only of the 3rd Ling Qi layer and could control his sword force. Yuan Shan was stunned. Could it be that Lin Feng had several spirits? A sword spirit and an ice spirit must have been used at the same time. Otherwise, how could he have used sword force at the same time as his ice spirit? Yuan Shan had only guessed right about one thing: Lin Feng did possess several spirits. Jing Yun wasn't too surprised. On the way to the Imperial city, she had already witnessed Lin Feng's strength a few times already. Lu Fei wasn't too surprised either. Lin Feng had shown her many times already that he wasn't an ordinary person. His power and his natural abilities were way too terrifying. Lin Feng was about to recall his spirit into his body when suddenly one of the practice rooms opened by itself. An intensely cold air came from the room as the chi flooded to the outside. Damn it, do you not understand the rules? Do you really want to die so badly? Said a voice coming from the room. A silhouette appeared and that person was staring at Lin Feng with incredible killing intent. Lin Feng frowned. A strangely savage smile appeared on his face. He released a piercingly cold chi again as well as sword chi and force. It was oppressing the opponent's body completely. The facial expression of the opponent drastically changed. His heart was pounding and he was truly scared of the combined energy which was oppressing his body. Let me practice in peace, damn it. Get lost.